Hey, regular Drews, we have another giveaway for you. We're giving away a 1960s inspired letterpress printed Nancy Drew notebook made by Please Hold Press. The cover's printed in a classic black and honey. Think lamplit libraries, teakwood desks, maybe a few hidden compartments. Feels like the kind of notebook you'd find in the glove box of a blue roadster. Inside, pure possibility. Jot your hunches, track your suspects, sketch the crime scene, build a timeline. Basically, it's for anyone with a secret to keep or a mystery to solve. Want one? Of course you do. Check out our Instagram post with info on how to enter and take a look at the notebook and order one for yourself while you're at it. Now on to the episode.
Well, aren't you a regular Nancy Drew?
I learned that from the Nancy Drew detective.
Okay, go.
You think you can follow the clues and solve the case of the missing condiment, Nancy Drew?
Because I've read every Nancy Drew mystery ever written.
Nancy, please tell me you're joking.
Wow, you suck at this Nancy Drew stuff. You should get a new hobby.
My name is Carson Drew, and this is my assistant, Nancy.
Nancy Drew.
It's curtains for you, Miss Drew.
Nancy Drew strikes again.
A regular Nancy Drew.
Well, hello, regular Drews.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to another episode. This is 112. We will be talking about another Nancy Drew mystery story, number 19, The Quest of the Missing Map.
Yay!
Kori, I have to say, this one was a little bit of a mess.
You read the revised text, right?
I read the revised text, and like the first half of it, I thought was like kind of cohesive and coherent, and then the second half of it, it was like they tried to jam way too much stuff into the end. They were trying to do way too much to the point where it's like basically they were just summarizing the plot.
Yeah.
Instead of like, writing a story.
Yeah.
But do I care that much? No, because it's about treasure hunting. It's about treasure hunting on a private island. So no, I don't mind it that much, but it wasn't exactly like a good book.
Yeah. We need to get you a copy of the original text.
Oh God, I bet it's so much better.
It's so much better. And if you guys have not read this one yet, please start with the original text because I can't even explain how much better it is. It's really worth it to just maybe even skip revise, just stick with the original on this one because you're absolutely right. They had to. Well, in fact, they actually added a few things from the original. It's like you took out some stuff and
extra stuff happening, stuff that didn't matter to the plot at all, stuff that didn't even like help the story at all. And I'm like, why is this in here? Like, did no one like? I know that this was like edited because like this was revised in 1969. The revised text was revised in 1969 by Priscilla Baker Carr. Like, I know that, and I'm like, what is this? What happened? What happened?
It's so strange that they would choose to make it shorter, but then also add in things. It's like, well, now you have even less time to explain everything. The original text, they do actually take their time to like explain, this is what's going on, and this is why we're doing this, and here's Nancy's thought process on what is going on with this. So it is much clearer in the original. Also a little bit more exciting.
Of course.
Opinion. Yeah.
Dang. Man, now I wish I'd read the original text. I knew it. As soon as I started hitting all the weirdness in the second half, I was like, like there's no way Mildred would have let this happen.
Yeah. And it's not even just the plot itself, because to be clear, it is ultimately the same story. It's not like Shadow Ranch where they completely change it.
Okay.
It's the same thing, but the writing is just, it makes all the difference. It really does. It makes it so much more exciting. The atmosphere is better. It almost felt, because I started with the original and then I read the revised second. It almost felt like, I don't know, maybe the best analogy is like reading Secrets Can Kill the Book and then playing the game, where it's like, that's not how it was supposed to happen. You really, really condensed it, and it's still a little bit weird, Not that it's bad, but
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that the revised text was like bad. Like I didn't not enjoy it. It's just like it wasn't quality at all.
Yeah.
And I really felt myself all the time being like, why did you tell me that? And like, what does that have to do with anything? Is that going to come back up later? No, it doesn't. That was like the entire second half of the book. The first half of the book kind of felt a little bit slow to the point where I was like, are we even going to get to the treasure hunting piece of it? Because like we're really dragging our feet on all of this other stuff. And then suddenly in the second half of the book, it's like, okay, we're there. And then, but we don't actually get to the island until like what, chapter 17?
There's only like 2 or 3 chapters where we actually do the treasure hunt.
And I'm like, we should have been here like at least 2 chapters ago. It was just very weirdly paced where I think it really gave itself problems at the end. But man, now I wish that I had read and written this summary about the original text. I'm like worried. I'm worried that it's when we read this like summary of events to you guys, that it's going to sound way more cohesive than it actually is. Because for me to like write what's happened in this book, I have to try to like make sense of it. And so I'm like trying to make sense of it to you, but I feel like also that's not like an accurate representation of what the book actually is. It's so hard, you guys. It's so hard to tell you what happens, but then also like not, because the book doesn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I want to make a coherent podcast, but the book isn't necessarily helpful in that regard.
I think that'll show through, kind of. Okay. It'll be obvious when we go through the plot what is just ultimately just a con of the book, you know.
Right.
But the premise, I will say, phenomenal. How do you get better than like, a secret treasure that's been lost for generations on this private island, and also this long lost twin plot line? Like, oh my gosh, it's so good. I don't want to say that you can only judge a mystery by the ending, because I definitely don't believe that. But I do feel like when you are reading a mystery or watching it, whatever, you do have to try to at least a little bit reserve judgment until you find out what the end reveal is or who the culprit is, whatever, because it does make a difference. If it can be a wonderful story and then you get to the end, if it's like, oh, that doesn't even make sense who the culprit is, why would it have happened that way? You know, it kind of brings it down quite a lot. So I don't know. I feel like some of the ending could have been a little bit more clear. Definitely could have been explained a little bit better. But ultimately was still really good. Good plot line. Yeah.
I will say there were some interesting little tidbits in this book as well, because we get like some Hannah backstory.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Which is fascinating. And so I'm really excited to talk about that.
We get a lot of good Hannah moments in this story, actually.
Yes, we do. Hannah is like basically the hero of this whole book. Like this book is definitely like Hannah centric. But like, we get Hannah's kind of a little bit more of her story from before she came to the Drew home. Also, another thing, Nancy is in art school.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Hold on. Where did that go? We don't talk about that ever again. First of all, we have a whole nother skill to add to Nancy's skill list, in that she is an amazing sketch artist, apparently, and can just draw sketches of criminals like very accurately. And she's going to art school for it, but at like Carson's behest. Like he's like basically told her like, oh, you're really good at that. You should go do that. You should pursue that. And she is. And it's like,
of course she is.
So this is so confusing to me. So is this like, I don't understand. First of all, I don't understand where this went. I don't understand where it came from. Is this has she ever been in art school before? It seems like this is probably an invention for the book.
I believe it is just so that Nancy can show off her skills with like drawing the suspect for the police and doing the like sketch or whatever, what they look like.
Also so that she can have like a connection with Ellen, who's another character in the book who is not an artist, but a musician. And so they like kind of bond over their love of like, I guess, art and music. I don't know, whatever. But it's interesting because also we'll have to talk about Nancy and Helen and Hannah's backstory with this because Ellen, sorry, not Helen. I said Helen.
Oh, yes.
Because I'm confused about how old Ellen is supposed to be and how old Nancy is supposed to be and the timeline with when Hannah came to work for the Drews.
I'm pretty sure she is like 3 or 4 years older because she's supposed to be in college, right?
Right. But so but Ellen tells us, and sorry, this is really deep for the beginning of this episode, but Ellen tells us, she talks about how Hannah taught her like songs and stuff, and she still remembers them, and she remembers Hannah from growing up. But I'm like, but if Hannah came to work for the Drews when Nancy's mom passed away when she was 3, how old was Ellen in that she can remember the songs that Hannah taught her if she's still in school and Nancy's supposed to be 18? Now she could have been 3 or 4, I guess. But it just seems a little bit far-fetched that she would remember Hannah
songs. Yeah, well,
remember that much and still kind of be close to Hannah because she is still close to Hannah. Now, I know it's possible Hannah could have kept in touch over the years, and so maybe that's why she remembers all of that. But it's like, but Hannah was at the Drew home like full time, especially when Nancy was young.
Right.
So I don't know. It's not quite adding up to me, the timeline.
This is one of those tiny little differences between the original and the revised, because the revised, Ellen is the one telling us this and going into the story of like, oh, I loved Hannah so much. Hannah tells us that in the original, where it's like, oh, Nancy, you remember Ellen, who I used to take care of before I came to work for your family. And then it's just kind of left at that. Let me see if I can't find it in the original as well.
Well, it would make more sense to the age in the original text too, because if Nancy was 16, then Ellen totally could be like 21 or whatever and be in school. And that would make a little bit more sense. Like, I feel like while I do remember like some stuff from probably first grade is probably the earliest memories I have. Maybe kindergarten, maybe. But how old are you then? You're like 6, right?
Yeah, 5 or 6. Yeah.
So like, I'm just like, I like songs too. Like that's such a specific thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too nitpicky, but it was just confusing to me.
The original does not mention the songs, but it doesn't mention an age either. So, oh well.
Well, whatever. But yeah, it's just interesting. And interesting how like we're using Ellen as kind of like this Nancy parallel, or like what Nancy could be or could have been, or what could happen to Nancy, because Ellen's not exactly, she's kind of, her family's kind of fallen on hard times, as we'll learn. And so I don't know, it's just interesting. And the girls become very fast friends. Yeah, the whole thing I find a little bit, I find it a little bit interesting. It's almost like like I would have wished that this had maybe happened to a relative of Nancy. Not that I don't like the Ellen character or the Smiths or whatever, but it just feels like we wanted to write a mystery about Nancy, so we made someone almost exactly like Nancy.
Okay, yeah.
Because it couldn't be Nancy's mystery for some reason.
Right.
Whereas I feel like, well, maybe Nancy could come, like maybe someone's asking Nancy to come nanny for her for this. Like, why are we asking a different character to do all of this? You know what I mean? And we can talk about that more later after we finish everything, so it'll make a little bit more sense. But yeah, it just all felt a little bit like extra. Like we're doing too much. We're making it too complicated.
Yeah.
So
that is, I think I said this when we read the Hardy Boys book, that I felt like we met everyone in Bayport. I felt like we really got everybody in River Heights. We meet so many people, and it's part of that where it's just like, oh, and here's her parents, and then a cousin, and then all these other people.
Yeah, no, for real. There were a lot of characters in this, for sure. And I do think something else that I noticed is that we do like a lot of traveling. And I don't just mean like going to different places, but I mean like driving back and forth. And so like, and then also, of course, we go on to the private island to find the treasure or whatever later. But it's like for like miles traveled, I think that like outside of Brass Bound Trunk, this one might have been like the most miles traveled in any Nancy Drew.
I could definitely see that. And they actually cut another trip out of the revised as well. There's a whole New York trip that gets cut. So, yeah.
Oh my God.
The Newkirk trip, that was supposed to be New York.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's like a whole thing as well. That was like a lot of stuff that they cut out while we were there. So we'll get to that. I'll let you know when we get there. But yeah.
Okay.
So, but yeah, lots and lots of travel.
Well, should we talk about the covers a little bit?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Okay. So I think for this, we have 3 different covers. We have a 1942 Tandy cover, a 1961 Nappy, and a 1969 Nappy. That's what I was able to find. I was a little bit confused about I couldn't find a lot of information on the 1961 Nappy, so that's just my guess as to when it was published. As it is. But I did find it. So
I feel like the first one and the most recent one are the more popular ones. I don't feel like I see the 61 one very often.
Yeah, I'd never seen it before I did that digging. But so the 1942 Tandy, we have Nancy in a classic red sweater, blue skirt situation, and she is pulling or holding half of the map, the missing map, in front of like this piano. Oh, you have it. Oh my God. So beautiful. And yeah, no, it's really gorgeous. And you can see this is in the cottage, which is like this kind of main location of the book. And you see all the ships, the model ships in the background. And there's a little globe. It's very beautiful.
With our bad guy creeping in the corner here too.
I can barely see that. Yeah, he's sneaking out from the hidden panel. But also Nancy's hair, her blonde hair in the 1940 like rolls. Like, what do you call that? Like the coif on the top of the head.
Coif, yeah.
Whatever that is, where they roll the top of the hair. It's just so pretty. So pretty.
This feels like kind of a silly thing to say, but I feel like this cover and the Tandy Old Attic cover are kind of like sisters because we have Nancy crouched over the old trunk in the attic, pulling out the sheet music with the creepy skeleton guy behind her peeking from the closet. And this one, she's facing the opposite direction, but she's like bent over the piano, holding the map. And then the creepy guy is peering at her from the closet as well. I don't know. I feel like there's such iconic covers, the both of them.
The thing I love the most about the Tandy cover is the lighting and the shadows that are like being cast. I think there's a lamp that's like sitting on top of the piano or something. But so Nancy's like face and her front are very well lit. But then you see kind of like the deep shadows cast behind her onto the creepy guy, right? Coming out of the panel, but also like on her back, you can see and like kind of cast onto the wall. It's just very cool looking.
Also, I'm just now noticing, I don't know if this is intentional. Does it seem like maybe the picture like is made to look like it's been torn in half almost at the top here?
I don't
just like
know.
The map.
I don't know.
It looks like it's kind of got like a jagged edge, and then everything where the title is just blue behind it.
Yeah,
I bet that was definitely intentional.
I haven't spent a lot of time looking at the Tandy covers and the graphic design on them in particular, and so I don't know. I don't notice that, but could be.
It doesn't seem like something he did on a lot of his other covers, so that's clever.
That is clever.
Sorry, anyway. I just noticed that.
So the 1961 Nappy is really different from the other two, and it's kind of muted in its colors, whereas the Tandy is really bright with the reds and the blues, and obviously the 69 Nappy is bright pink. The 1961 is just, it's kind of brown. Nancy's wearing like a yellow dress. She's looking at these model ships in the same location, that cottage, and she's seeing the figure in the mirror. So that is a direct scene from the book. Whereas I think the 1942 Tandy isn't really, right? Because Nancy doesn't have the map at that point when she sees the guy come out of the wall. So it's a little bit of an imagining, right? With different elements of the books. But the 1961 Tandy, or Nappy, sorry, is a straight from the book. And then the 1969 Nappy is just our Vigenay style nappies, bright pink. And we see Nancy in the foreground, and then George, and then Bess kind of like fanning out behind her on this pink background with like half of the torn map on the back.
It's so good. And
it's my favorite because it's pink.
I love it.
I love the pink covers so much. Mm-hmm. I love it because it's like we're not shying away from the feminine, you know. I will say it's an interesting choice to put Bess and George on it though, because I feel like as much as they were there, they aren't the only one who was really involved in the investigation, and so it just seemed like, I don't know, a little bit of it's an Nancy Drew book, so we should put Bess and George on the cover, when really it didn't feel necessary to me. But yeah, I don't know.
It feels like a simple cover. Obviously, it's just their faces and the map, but it's all it really needs. You know, it's enough to still draw you in and be like, oh, what's this pink thing? What's that thing behind them?
Yeah, I love it. 3 words.
Oh, I feel like kidnapping has to be one.
That's a good one. Yes. Kidnapping for sure.
I feel like they cut one from the revised, but there's 5 different times in the original text where someone is either kidnapped or missing and believed to have probably been kidnapped. It's like, oh my gosh, it's so much.
Oh goodness. Yeah, so kidnapping.
But also like boats or nautical, anything with the sea is very important to the story.
Let's just say the sea.
The sea. Okay, the sea. I like it. Yeah.
Kidnapping, the sea, and then, God, I just feel like there's so many random people in this, but I don't know how to like, what's a word that like captures that, you know? Like randos is the only thing I can think. But it's not, I don't know, it's not even just randos. It's just like we literally everyone we've ever met is here.
Or even like duplicates maybe, because we have the whole like twin plot line, but then there's also like how many times do we duplicate the map, because we have 2 versions of the map, but then each of those versions has like 3 different copies, and so it just feels like, okay, who has which piece and which part is the real one and which one's the decoy, and
don't we just all have the information now?
Right.
Yes. Okay, I love that. Yes. Okay, so perfect. So kidnapping, the sea, and duplication.
Yes.
For some reason. Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. Let's get into it, Kori.
Let's do it.
So in chapter 1, we start off and Nancy is returning home from art school. Like I said before, so wild. And Hannah introduces her to a visitor named Ellen Smith. And apparently Hannah used to work for Ellen's family before she worked for the Drews. Ellen is apparently only a few years older than Nancy, but like we talked about, that's confusing and debatable. And she is attending a music college because she's a very talented singer. But her family has somewhat fallen on hard times financially, and so Ellen wants to take up a summer job as a live-in music teacher to a young girl at this estate called Rocky Edge. But Ellen is like kind of fearful of this place, though she won't explain exactly why. And in my opinion, she never does, and it doesn't make any sense as to why she's fearful of this place, and we never get an explanation for that. But she wants Hannah to come out with her to kind of like suss out this place when she interviews, to see if she should take this job despite her fear of it, right? But Hannah actually volunteers Nancy to do this because of this like slight mystery. She thinks Nancy could be helpful, and so Ellen accepts Nancy's help very gratefully.
I want to say that the fear is really just the like reputation that Mrs. Chatham has of being kind of weird and like disagreeable and hard to get along with. And in the original text, they play it up a lot more of like, oh, she's so awful and like so difficult to get along with and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Again, I don't feel like they really explain further than that, though. I feel like we could have spent a lot more time getting into like the why and like figuring out what is actually the real reason.
Yeah, I could see, is there like part of that is being like a change from the original text to the revised text, but in the revised text they specifically mention when she's in the car on the way that the reason why she's scared of the estate has to do with a treasure and a missing map.
Oh yeah, that got added because we don't learn about that until we go to see Mr. Smith.
And she's not going to say anything more. And even though Nancy like really wants to ask questions, she doesn't. But like she specifically says that, but it doesn't make any sense as to why she thinks that at this point. So yeah, that was like, I was like, this can't be. This can't be why you're scared. But But anyway, yeah. So they head out to Rocky Edge, and on the way to the estate, Ellen, mentions that the reason she's fearful has something to do with the map and buried treasure, but won't say anything more. They get to the estate, and it is spooky and overgrown, and they ring the doorbell. And first we meet a very animated young girl named Trixie, and she is who would be Ellen's pupil if Ellen accepts the job. And then we meet Trixie's apparently horrible mother, Mrs. Chatham. She borderline physically abuses Trixie, right in front of them, yanking her by her arm. And then also when she's talking to Ellen about the job, she talks so horribly about Trixie. And Trixie is just standing right there this whole time, to the point where Nancy is like, okay, I need to take this girl out of here so that she doesn't hear all the horrible things her mother is saying about her. And so she gets Trixie to take her on a tour of the grounds as a way to get her away from her mother. And this is really interesting because I do think that this is the only time in the revised text that we really get this super negative portrayal of Mrs. Chatham outside of maybe the concert, which we can talk about later. But she's portrayed as being a really bad mother, but not necessarily a bad person, which is it's just interesting. But anyway, so Nancy takes Trixie away, and Trixie ends up showing Nancy a cabin that apparently Trixie is really terrified of, and she won't go any closer to. And obviously this makes Nancy extremely curious about this cabin / cottage. And so after Trixie runs away in fright, Nancy decides to check it out by herself. So she goes in, and it's a seemingly normal cottage, but she does notice that there are tons of ships and bottles decorating the place. And Nancy is looking at one on the mantle when she notices in the mirror in front of her the reflection of a beady-eyed man appearing in a panel on the back wall. And he says, "Leave here at once and never come back." And so Nancy is spooked. She tries to rush over to the panel, but it closes before she can reach it. And so she just kind of runs out of this cottage and goes to meet back up with Ellen. And Ellen tells Nancy that she told Mrs. Chatham that she's going to think over whether or not she wants to take the position. And Nancy's like, okay, yeah, that was smart because there's definitely something going on here. And when Nancy gets back home, she tells Carson about it, and he says that he remembers that Rocky Edge used to be owned by an inventor whose name he can't remember. But he does remember that there was some kind of lawsuit against him because of one of his inventions or something. And so that'll come up a little bit later, very briefly. Yeah. The next day, Ellen is set to have a recital at her college. And so Nancy takes Bess and George with her to go watch Ellen perform. When they get there, though, it's super crowded, and so they're forced to split up to find seats. And Nancy ends up sitting next to Mrs. Chatham, who has also come here to watch Ellen. And they strike up a conversation about Rocky Edge, and we learn a little bit more. Mrs. Chatham tells us that she bought the estate from the inventor guy, whose name we learn was Silas Norse. Not important, doesn't really matter at all. And Nancy asks about the ships and the bottles, and she learns that they belong to Mrs. Chatham's first husband, who is deceased, and she had them moved into the cottage because I guess her second husband wanted to get rid of them or something, but she really didn't, and so she put them in there.
I believe she said she asked the second husband to move them because they made her sad.
Oh yeah.
So he did move it, but at her request.
Get rid of them, I think.
Right.
Yeah. She was sad, but she didn't want to get rid of them. So sad.
Yeah.
But the cottage they didn't build, that has been there on the property since before they owned it. And the concert starts up, and Ellen is apparently sings beautifully, just as much as we thought she would. And so beautifully, in fact, that after the concert, when they all meet up with her, outside, Mrs. Chatham demands that Ellen answer as to whether or not she's going to take the position with her, because she's like, "You're so good. You have to come work for me." And it's really awkward. And Ellen's like, "No, I really need to think about it. I really need more time." And Mrs. Chatham is frustrated and kind of agrees to hold the position, but she leaves in a huff because she's like, this is unacceptable, kind of a thing. Ellen then agrees that she'll explain to Nancy her mystery about this map and the treasure, but she'll have to come visit her at her home and speak to her father about it, because it's really not Ellen's story to tell, it's really Ellen's father's story. So Nancy, Bess, and George drive with Ellen to her family's home that evening, and they meet her father, whose name is Tomlin Smith. But apparently, Tomlin was actually his surname, and he added the Smith because he was adopted. So Tomlin became his first name, and then Smith became his last name. His mother apparently died when he and his twin brother, John Abner Tomlin, were 14. And their father was a captain of a freighter, and he took the boys around the world with him after their mother passed away. But the ship apparently that they were on got caught in like a horrible hurricane, and just before sinking, their father told the boys that their grandfather had hidden a buried treasure on an island somewhere in the Atlantic. And he showed them a map and then ripped it in half and gave one half to each brother so that they could only ever find the treasure if they worked together to find it, as a way to like ensure that they each got, a portion of their inheritance, right? But then as the boat was sinking, each of the boys got loaded onto different lifeboats and they never saw each other again. This is crazy. This is a crazy story and very, very sad.
What a great setup, though. Very sad. But what an interesting premise.
Yes. Also, they are twins, like I said before, but they're not identical twins. They're fraternal twins. So this makes it a little bit more of a harder to parse story because we're trying to learn the identity of this guy. And it's more challenging because they don't look exactly alike, right?
Also, the father says that he spent like a good portion of his adult life looking for this island and could never find it.
With the whole map.
With the entire map. And so now Nancy is going to find it with just half the map. So
yeah,
that's so funny.
But yeah, so their father died at sea. He died in that hurricane. And then Tomlin was eventually adopted by another family, right? And so here we are. He still has his half of the map, but at this point he's bedridden after some kind of illness or accident.
I think a car accident, They say. Yeah.
And they don't have the funds to try to locate the treasure, but they probably couldn't anyway without his brother's half of the map, right? So, but really Tomlin just says that mostly he just wants to reconnect with his brother.
Yeah.
He doesn't particularly care about the treasure. He just wants to know what happened to his brother and would love the opportunity to get to talk to him again. So sad. So we do learn, though, that right before Ellen, Nancy, Bess, and George showed up, the Smiths had another visitor. And actually, we saw him like drive away when we pulled up. But this visitor was someone apparently named Mr. Rourke, and Rourke claims that he heard this treasure story from the first mate from the freighter and tracked Mr. Smith down, and he wanted to buy this map piece from Mr. Smith, but Mr. Smith refused his offer. But it's really weird, though, because if Tomlin Smith did change his name, then how did Rourke track him down? How did he find him? So it's a little bit of a suspicious story. We're a little bit confused as to why this is happening and why this is happening now, right? But Nancy asks Mr. Smith if she can make a copy of the map, and he lets her. And she doesn't make any promises, but she does say that she's going to try to think about it and try to see what she can find out for them. On their way back to River Heights, the girls spot that car that Mr. Rourke was driving that they had seen pull away from the house, and Nancy decides to follow it, but unfortunately Mr. Rourke catches on that they were following him and manages to evade them.
So at this point, Nancy just goes home and Carson's there. So she tells him all about the mystery, and she asks for his help to look through maps to see if they can't figure out, using this half of the map piece, where this island might be. But because of the way the map was torn, I'm not super clear on this because I feel like if you have a half of it, you could still compare half of the island to an existing map. But supposedly the way that it was torn makes it impossible to distinguish which way is north or whatever. And so it's really difficult to find on a real map, what shape would match the shape on this map.
My thought was just probably that the map isn't great to begin with. And so trying to compare maybe with the maps that they have, I'm sure the scale is much different. And with only half of it, you're well, maybe it could be this, maybe not. It would be maybe not impossible, but probably improbable that they could figure it out based on just half of it and not seeing the whole shape. But
I also figure maybe some latitude and longitude lines might have gotten cut off, and so you can't really tell where.
Or maybe there aren't any. We don't really know where this map came from, who drew it.
True, it could be very, very old. And it seems like it,
and very vague. We don't know. Yeah.
presumably their grandfather would have drawn it if he's the one who buried the treasure, but still, yeah. So they really, they look, but they really don't find any information. So Nancy decides that she's going to go to the library and do a little bit more research into this. But unfortunately, same issue there. We don't really find anything with the maps at the library. She does try to look through library records to see if there's any record of a John Abner Tomlin, but again, we really don't find any information about him. She does, though. She finds a list of the crew that went down with the Tomlin dad. And there's like a full list of every name from that ship. And the guy that this Rourke person like claimed was the person that he'd heard the story about from, that name is not on this list. So again, seems like he is probably lying about where he found this. So she looks up some more information about Rocky Edge while she's at the library and finds out more about the lawsuit that Carson mentioned. Apparently, there was a thief who tried to break into Silas Norse's house.
Oh my God.
And in the break-in, he like got injured by one of Norse's inventions and so tried to sue him for the damages of breaking into his own house.
This is crazy.
I feel like this is a real thing. Like nowadays, if you look this up, there have actually been court cases where the thief like or a burglar like injures themselves on something and the homeowner ends up having to pay for their medical bills or something.
Oh my God.
This is such a weird case. But so at this point, Nancy calls Ellen to update her a little bit about what she's learned. And Ellen actually invites her to come to her school to visit her. There's another recital that she's going to be performing at. And then she asks her to like stay in her dorm or something overnight with her. So Nancy goes, they have a wonderful time. It's very nice. But then Ellen says something about needing to pick up something from her parents' home for something for a class or something the next day. So she's like, would you mind if we actually just spent the night at my parents' house instead? And so they go, but it's like an hour drive or something. It's really long drive from the school to the parents' house. So when they get there, it's like almost midnight. It's really, really late. And she's forgotten her key and her parents are already in bed. So they bang on the door for a little bit and obviously nobody answers. So they're like, okay, let's just go try the back door real quick. Let's quietly sneak around to the side. And when they get to the side of the house, they see a ladder propped up against like a second floor window and some shadowy figure is moving around upstairs.
My God.
They're being burgled right now. Actually, the burglar is actually currently coming down the ladder. So Nancy and Ellen like jump on him, but he manages to like run away and she only kind of gets a glimpse of his face as he runs off. They start shouting for help and all the neighbors like come outside and there's a big commotion. So everybody comes out to see what's going on and the police show up. And this is when Nancy does her little sketch of the face that she saw for the police. And they're very, very grateful and impressed at her art skills. But basically, the cops are already well acquainted with this guy. They even refer to him as their friend. Like, oh, this guy is busy again. But we learned that he is a known criminal / previous or former sailor named Spike Doty. And Nancy recognizes this from the newspaper article about the break-in. Spike Doty was the guy who broke into the inventor's home. Very interesting. So at this point, the Smith parents wake up and Mrs. Smith goes to like check or whatever. And we find that Mr. Smith's map has been stolen. Luckily, Nancy already made that copy. So she promises that she will make an additional copy for Mr. Smith to keep. And then she'll also keep the copy for herself. And then everyone kind of, the excitement starts to die down. So everyone kind of starts to go back into their homes. But then Nancy notices just like a little bit across the street or whatever, there's a man and a woman just kind of standing there watching all this happen. And then they weirdly just like slip into a car and drive away really quickly. I thought all the neighbors came running. So why would you drive home? Did they just happen to be driving by and stopped when they saw the commotion? Or did they come specifically to see this house? Who knows? The next day, Ned has invited us to a dance at Emerson. So we're going to head to Emerson College for a dance. But on the way there, she notices that she's being followed by the same car that we saw that couple in last night. So that's a little strange. Oh my gosh. There's so many parts in this book where Nancy is like extremely clever. There's a few parts where I get mad at her as well, but this part is really, really clever, the way that she does this. There's a few other books where I'm like, Nancy, why wouldn't you have done this in that same situation to get yourself out of this? But this is really great. So she realizes that these people are following her and that she still has the copy of the treasure map in her purse. And so if they're able to like stop her or get to her, they might be able to steal it from her. So she decides to like drive a different route to see if she can lose them. And she does not end up losing them. She comes to this small town. She's able to like run inside of I think it's the bus station or something, find a payphone, call Ned at Emerson. And Ned's like, okay, stay right where you are. Do not let these people approach you. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I'm going to grab the next bus. I'll be right there. Just stay in public until I can get to you. Oh my gosh, this is so clever. So, I love this. So she starts kind of just like running around town trying to lose these people. She runs into like a deli or something. And she goes into a department store.
Post office.
Yeah, and then she goes to the department store. She makes another copy of the map while she's in a different phone booth, and then is able to like, the woman from the couple from the car like starts following her on foot, and so she goes to the department store, makes the copy, then she goes to the post office, mails the copy to Carson just in case they are able to get this away from her, so that one copy is safe. That's so clever. I love it. So she mails it to Carson, and then just as she does that, it's like time to go meet Ned back at the bus station. So by the time she gets there, he's like getting off the bus when somebody runs up and steals her purse. Great. So Ned is like walking over, and Nancy starts talking to a police officer who's standing there about what just happened, and they're not able to follow the guy and track down the purse or whatever because he gets away too quickly. And he's like, oh no, Nancy, your purse, what are we going to do? You lost the copy of the map. And she's like, oh no, I actually put it in my pocket and all of my money as well. Very, very smart. So knowing that her purse was probably going to get snatched, she transferred everything to a different pocket.
So clever.
Excellent. But all the excitement of that dies down. So we head to Emerson. They attend their little dance together. Everybody has a really nice time. And then Ned is like, oh, you have to meet my classmate, Bill Tomlin. Come on, Tomlin. So she's like, surely that's just a coincidence, right? So we go over and we talk to Bill a little bit, and he does confirm that, yeah, a lot of his relatives have been sea captains.
What?
Actually, his grandfather's brother was a sea captain, and that brother happens to have had twin sons. One of those sons actually became a sea captain himself.
Oh.
And then the other son, the family doesn't know what happened to him. He just sort of disappeared after that hurricane. Very strange.
We know what happened.
We know what happened. So Nancy is asking, like, okay, do you know where I can find the sea captain twin? Who we think is probably John Abner, right? But just as she is trying to get this information out of Bill, she gets pulled on stage because she's crowned like prom queen or whatever. Not prom queen, but like queen of the dance. They all voted and decided that Nancy was the best person. I don't know.
Just the kind of shenanigans that happen at like weird Greek life events. Like, this is just the kind of thing I can imagine.
Yes.
It's like, because they're like putting on like a play, a pantomime, as they call it or whatever. And they're like, we need Nancy to like preside as queen over the pantomime. And she's like, what? Okay.
And Ned puts on like a mask and starts dancing around her too.
Oh, that must be in the original text. I don't remember that. That's so funny. No, but I honestly, this part really grossed me out too, because they talk about when Nancy like arrives, she like looks so good. Like she's like wearing a dress. She's like, looks great. Fantastic. But like people like give Ned like approving nods when they see her. They like look at her and then look at him and they're like, hey, it's like, ew.
Yeah.
Ew. Just like she's like some piece of arm candy. And then because she looks so good, she's like the best dressed person at the whole dance. They're like, okay, well, she's going to be the queen. It's just weird. It's just weird, gross shenanigans. I don't like it.
No, the original, we do dance cards because, of course, that was a thing back in the 40s. And we have to say, before we even go to the dance, when Hannah is like helping us hem our dress or whatever, we have to specify that Nancy's dance card has been full for weeks already before the dance even starts. And so she's going to be fully booked at this. And Ned is like
crazy.
Going to have to fight for his time with her. And everyone's really jealous that Ned got to bring her as his date and all this. Yeah.
As much as I like the concept of the organization of a dance card, like I like a schedule, you know me. I love
efficient.
A schedule. Yes. But the fact, I'm so glad we did away with those because that is so weird. That's so weird. That like people can like claim your time and like would claim your time like weeks in advance to it's not like a business meeting,
right?
This is like, no, we're gonna dance because I know you're so hot, like I just want to be in your presence for like what 2 minutes.
Does Nancy get to refuse people who sign her card? Like, can she be like, no, you're not allowed to?
I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm thinking about like Bridgerton or like, you know, like Jane Austen novels or whatever. It was rude. It was rude to try to like prevent someone from signing your dance card to like sign up.
Is Ned dancing with other girls too? Has he been signing everybody else's dance cards?
This is the thing. I'm like, if he invited her to the dance and he has to like fight for time, like it's just weird. It's weird.
Why would you not dance with your date?
Why would you not dance with your date? Now, like in the past, obviously, because this is like a holdover from like probably what, Victorian area?
Yeah.
I don't know. But like you wouldn't have shown up. Well, you wouldn't have shown up with a date. You would have shown up with a chaperone. And then people at other eligible men at the party would then sign your dance card. When that makes, I feel like that makes sense.
Right.
But like, yeah, but if you get invited to a fraternity dance from a fraternity brother, because you would have to have been invited by someone in the fraternity to then be like, well, other guys have signed my dance card. Like,
it's weird.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
I feel like in that situation, your date at least gets first run at your dance card, you know? Be like, well, I'm going to sign up for these dances, you know? And then maybe politely would be like, you're welcome to have other people sign. But this is still awkward. It's still really awkward. I don't know. Ugh.
This whole scene. Yeah.
Sorry. Here we are trying to like figure out the subtleties of like what was appropriate for a 1940s frat party dance. What is life?
Just in case we need that information.
Right. Just in case
never know.
we ever get invited
to a 1940s frat party.
As we're in our 30s. If we ever go back in time, suddenly like age down 10 years. Yeah.
We'll be all set. We'll know exactly. We'll know what manners we need to navigate that party successfully.
But it sounds really complicated, honestly.
Is it like, did they pre-plan the songs too? Like, do you have it on you? Like, how do you know when it's your turn?
It would be the type of dance, right? So like waltz.
Oh, okay,
versus,
of course.
I don't know what other tango. I don't know.
Sure.
A volta. Sorry, I'm just thinking about Elizabethan times now. Oh my God, what is life? No, yeah, because they would have like a band. I couldn't remember the name for band there for a second. No, but like usually like
an orchestra.
Yes, something like that. And then they would play like specific, not necessarily specific songs, but like songs in a specific measure for a specific type of dance. Yeah.
That makes more sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we dance. Our dance card gets full. We have all of our dances. And then, like I said, at the end, Nancy is crowned queen or whatever because she's the most beautiful one there. Oh my gosh. But yeah, so she is given a crown and a robe. She's put in this chair on stage and they start like performing around her. And she makes a comment about like how she knows Ned is one of the weird dancers with the masks on. But then in the middle of the performance, the lights just go out. And when the lights come back on, Nancy is missing. The chair is just empty. And that's because she's been kidnapped. Someone in a mask, while the lights were out, came up to her and said, "You need to follow me." And assuming that it was a part of the play or whatever production they were putting on here, she just agreed to follow them out into the hallway. And when she gets there, our friends from the car, the ones who sped off from the burglar the other night, they are waiting for her, and they bind her and gag her and throw her in the car and drive away with her.
I'm keeping a tally now. This is number 1, kidnapping.
Oh, for kidnapping? Yeah.
But so, yeah, Nancy gets kidnapped. They're like threatening her that like saying like, "Oh, we're going to keep you here until you give us that copy of the map or until we can get that copy of the map from you." And Nancy, being in another moment of true cleverness, she gets them both like arguing. Between the two of them, she like accuses one of them of stealing the map already and then not telling the other person, and that they're only doing this to try to like keep up the charade or whatever when really they already have the map.
That's
and
so smart.
So they start fighting in between each other, and Nancy uses their argument as an opportunity to escape the car at a traffic light, and she approaches and like signals an oncoming car for rescue. Through this ordeal, though, she does learn that her captors' names are Fred and Irene Brown, and that, yes, they are working with Spike Doty. Nancy has her rescuers drop her back off at the Emerson gym and reunites with the very worried Ned. Nancy actually convinces him not to call the police about this because she wants to talk to Carson first, but she never does tell the police about this, so whatever. I don't understand how you get kidnapped and you're just, like, fine about it, but... Okay.
She gives a grace period. It's not until the second one that she calls the cops on you.
Well, and I guess maybe when it happens to you 5 times in a week, it's like, I'll let you have the first one. The first one's fine, but we're going to have some problems after the 3rd time.
First one's free, but then I'm pressing charges.
But so she also meets back up with Bill Tomlin, and he arranges for her to meet with his father on her way back to River Heights the next day because she wants to ask more questions about his sea captain relative, right? So the next day she does stop by Mr. Tomlin's office, and he tells her more about who I think is his cousin. Must be his cousin.
I believe so.
John Tomlin. Unfortunately, he's passed away, and this Mr. Tomlin can't remember his middle name, so we can't confirm for sure whether or not it's John Abner Tomlin. But he does say, however, that he has a photograph of him at home, and he's going to mail that to Nancy so that Nancy can use that to try to identify him. So after this meeting, Nancy drives straight to Rocky Edge. She arrives and she hears a scream coming from the direction of the cottage. And Nancy runs over in time to see Trixie, the little girl, fleeing straight into the road, shouting, "Ghosts, ghosts, I saw them, they're in the cottage." And she's running straight into the path of an oncoming car. And so, once again, Nancy pulls a child out of the way of an approaching vehicle. Trixie is fine, but she's obviously frightened. And at this point, Bess and George arrive because Nancy had asked them to meet her here for some reason. I don't know, it's not important. And Trixie tells them what happened. She says she saw a ghost with horrible eyes peering out of the window of the cottage. And so Nancy tells Trixie to go back into the house with Bess while she and George investigate the cottage. And they do, but the cottage is like locked and there's no other way in. So they actually have to go get the key from Mrs. Chatham. And so she gives them the key, and all of them, sans Trixie, head back to the cottage to investigate. And Nancy's looking around while all the others are outside. And Nancy ends up finding a wire which just appears into a wall. It connects to a piano. It's not important. And she realizes...
I thought the piano thing was going to be relevant to anything.
Well, they spend so much time on it because, like, the very first time Nancy goes into the cottage, it, like, she tries to play the piano, but it doesn't make any noise. Mm-hmm. And then later it does make noise, and she's like, was I, like, hallucinating or something? But it was, like, an invention from the inventor. It was, like, a trick piano where, like, sometimes it would play and sometimes it wouldn't play, which, like, I'm sorry, why? Why
what's the point of that invention? Like, all that work to make it not play sometimes? Like, what's the point?
But anyway, this is when Nancy finds the wire that must, and she realizes that it's a trick. And it doesn't matter. The wire goes into the wall where she's like, there must be a secret panel here. And she manages to pry it open. But just as she does, she hears a cry from outside, which sounds like George. And so she runs outside to see George running like full force after some guy. So Nancy follows, but the guy gets away. And George says that, like, when they were outside, this guy appeared out of the back of the cottage suddenly. He must have been trying to sneak out when he heard them, like, come in. And so Mrs. Chatham goes to call the police while Nancy, Bess, and George explore the secret passageway that Nancy found. And, like, the man had, like, come out of. There was, like, 2 entrances, one inside the cottage and then one exiting the cottage. And inside this passageway, there are a ton of boxes and crates, and inside are like a bunch of nautical stuff, like shells and maps, and I guess more model boats or something. I don't know. And Mrs. Chatham identifies them as also belonging to her first husband, Mr. Tomlin.
What?
Right. So we're like, hold the phone. Your first husband's name was Tomlin? And Nancy quickly deduces that this must be the sea captain Tomlin, John Abner Tomlin, who is related to Bill Tomlin and also Tomlin Smith. Right?
Serendipity knows no bounds in Nancy Drew.
But she can't quite confirm that this is John Abner Like, she's not sure. I don't know if she's not sure, because we've already figured out to a certain extent. I guess she suspects that they're related to Bill Tomlin, but she still doesn't know somehow that Tomlin is related to Tomlin Smith somehow. Anyway.
Yeah.
But the police arrive, and Nancy's able to give them a sketch that she was able to make of the footprints that the fleeing man left, because it, like, started raining. So she, like, sketched the footprint. I don't know. Whatever.
This is, like, very useful to police, though. They're like, perfect. We know exactly who would wear these shoes. What? Okay.
I mean, like, I know, I'm sure she's sketching, like, the tread or whatever,
right,
and maybe, like, the size. But it seems to me like a sketch is not gonna tell you anything. A sketch of a footprint, I'm just envisioning, like, you know, like a like an old school just like outline of like a shoe. I'm like, this is not helpful, but
yeah,
whatever. But so after the police leave, they suddenly like hear a shriek from Trixie outside because she's fallen down some random hole in the ground, which apparently no one has seen before. They even called the gardener over. He's like, yeah, I've never seen that. The gardener has never seen this hole that's just in the middle of the lawn. What?
This was confusing. I'm like, did the bad guys dig this, or does sinkhole open?
Well, yeah, it's not like it's just like a small hole. Like, Trixie falls down it and she's stuck. She's stuck in there. So it's Trixie, and Trixie's what, 7? So it's probably at least 4 feet. Like, it's got to be more than 4 feet for her to be unable to climb out of it. So it is a deep, deep hole.
They have to get a ladder to get it. And Nancy even says when she hears the shriek, she's like, she assumed that Trixie had fallen down a well.
Yes.
And like, it's like, oh my gosh. So is it a well? Is it like just an old well shaft or something like that? Or who knows? It's strange.
We don't know, but they managed to rescue Trixie and she's okay. She just has some scrapes, but once Nancy gets down the hole, because Trixie asked Nancy to come get her because Trixie really likes Nancy. Who doesn't, right? And so Trixie goes down into the hole and sees that this hole connects to some kind of passage. And so she and George decide to follow it to see where it goes.
This part is a little bit weird. I also don't understand how there's this like network of tunnels running underneath the property. But that's basically what we find. We find this like underground alcove, and Nancy follows this passage. And when they get there, there's this large machine just kind of in the middle of the passage, and it has a sign on it that says highly explosive, do not touch. So clearly this is like an invention left by Silas North, right? And there's an envelope that's sitting, I guess, like on top of this weird machine. So Nancy opens it and reads it. And inside is a list made by Silas North of all of his inventions that he's created. But it doesn't look like a complete list, because I think some things like the trick piano are missing from the list. So it looks like he had tried to go through and remove a lot of his inventions before he sold the property. But obviously he missed quite a few of them because this list is not very thorough, I guess.
This is just crazy to me because I was so sure that this was going to matter.
Yeah. It like doesn't come back at all. It doesn't explode.
Like, okay, or like, yeah, definitely this thing is going to explode. It's like Chekhov's gun, right? We have a machine that says don't touch, highly explosive. I was like, okay, so of course it's going to explode.
Right.
It doesn't. And then also I'm like, okay, well, there's a list of inventions, so surely that must be important. We're going to find another invention, or an invention is going to play into this somehow. Nope. No.
Really, the only inventions that come into play are the trick piano, which means nothing, and the sliding passageways. That's it. Okay.
And it could have just been a normal passageway. Like, it could have just been, like, the sliding door is the only quote-unquote invention part of it. And it's like, it could just be a normal door.
Yeah. There's plenty of sliding doors that, like, look normal, you know?
Like, and the only implication of, like, all of the inventions and the fact that an inventor even owned Rocky Edge before all this is the fact is the lawsuit where we learned that Spike Doty had broken into Rocky Edge before.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's it. So, anyway.
Oh my gosh.
Continue.
So Nancy and George come back out of the hole or whatever, and they tell Mrs. Chatham about what they found. And they warn her, they're like, yeah, this doesn't seem like the most safe place to be right now, especially for a young child. And so Mrs. Chatham starts talking about how she may want to take Trixie on like a little vacation, just at least until the machine is disassembled, whatever. And Nancy's like, well, would you like maybe a tropical cruise vacation? How does that sound to you? And Mrs. Chatham's like, what? So Nancy ends up telling her about Tomlin Smith and explains that that's Ellen's father, and explains the missing map and everything, and kind of explains how she might have the other half of the map because she is the widow of the other brother. Mm-hmm. So she is extremely excited by this. She likes to travel by boat, she says, I guess.
This bothers me so much because later she gets really seasick.
For like the entire voyage, the entire way there.
They even say that she's not a good quote unquote sailor or whatever. And I'm like, but she said that she only liked to travel by boat. So does she just like being sick all the time? What kind of weird, like, Munchausen stuff is this? What?
Oh, it's so strange. But essentially, she agrees to this, and she says that if Nancy is able to find the island or whatever, then she will take everyone, including her, like, including Bess and George and Ellen's family. She'll take them on this cruise.
In retrospect, I was like, this is crazy. But in retrospect, I do wonder if part of this was because she was still trying to convince Ellen to take the job.
Yeah.
She's like, sure, I'll pay for it.
Yeah. We'll go on the cruise. She'll change her mind by the end, right? Oh, gosh. But okay, so since, of course, we think that her first husband was probably John Abner Tomlin, we go back to the cottage to look through his things a little bit more. They look through the boxes and try to find any like old belongings, because I guess Mrs. Chatham didn't really look through a lot of his papers when he died, so she's not really sure what's in the contents of these boxes. But they do end up finding a like hidden compartment inside the secret passageway, and inside the compartment is a box. And the box does not contain the map, but it does contain a safety deposit box key and like a book belonging to John Tomlin. So Mrs. Chatham says that she will do what she can to try to figure out where this safety deposit box is. And then Trixie comes back in and says that there's some visitors for Mrs. Chatham. She needs to come back up to the main house. So Mrs. Chatham leaves to go talk to this man and woman who come to see her. So she goes, but then while Nancy is still in this cottage or whatever looking around, she comes back and says, oh, these people that came to see me, they know about the map, and there's some interesting information that you're going to want to hear. So Nancy joins her. They go back up to the main house to talk to the people. And when we get there, we realize that it's the same couple that kidnapped us, the Browns, from the frat party. Great. So they see Nancy, realize what's going on here, get spooked, and they run off, but not before Nancy manages to jot down their license plate number. And she does report that to the police. So we learned from Mrs. Chatham that these two introduced themselves to her as Mr. and Mrs. Fred Brown, and they claimed to have known John Tomlin before he died, and said that he was like a very good friend of theirs, and that he had told them about the map. And so they came here to warn Mrs. Chatham that some unscrupulous man was after that map, and that she needs to leave town right away so that this man doesn't like come after her or whatever. And then Mrs. Chatham's like, oh, you need to tell my friend this story. Let me go get her. And then that's when Nancy realized who they were.
Right.
So Nancy suggests, like, okay, don't do what they say. And in fact, let's hire some guards because this is not a good sign. So Mrs. Chatham agrees to this. Nancy leaves, and on the way home, she stops by the police station to talk to Chief McGinnis. He says that they have not located the Browns yet, but they did determine that the footprint Nancy took the sketch of definitely 100% belongs to Spike Doty. So anyway, Nancy gets home and she finds a letter in the mail from Bill Tomlin's father, and inside is the photo that he'd promised us of John Abner. So we pocket this so that we can show it to Mrs. Chatham later. I think we also mentioned that Aunt Eloise sends us a letter at this point too. And I was so mad. I'm like, you don't even tell us what she says. Like, we don't get an update about Aunt Eloise. She's not mentioned in the original, of course, because I don't think she'd technically been invented quite yet. But we do still mention that Nancy received a letter from her from New York.
Right. We did. Yeah.
But we go to New York later and we don't get to visit her, which is sad. Anyway. So she pockets that picture to show to Mrs. Chatham later. But then that night she has a bad dream about the man who broke into the Smith home.
This is so funny.
And she wakes herself up in the middle of the night with this dream, and she realizes that that's the same face she saw peering out of the sliding door in the Chatham cottage. So from memory, Nancy sketches his face so that she can show it to the police. The next day, Mrs. Chatham and Trixie go to Carson's office to talk to him about getting a safety deposit box appointment or whatever. Well, no, it's the documentation that she'll need to prove that she's the widow to have the right to open it or whatever. So Carson is able to do whatever legal stuff he needs to do for them. But then Nancy shows the photo of John Abner to Mrs. Chatham, and she's like, oh yes, that is definitely my first husband. So yes, confirmed. We knew it all along anyway. But yes, she was John Abner's widow. Nancy does also show the sketch that she made to Trixie, and Trixie gets immediately spooked and is like, yep, that's the guy that I saw in the cottage. So we're pretty sure that the man who stole the map from the Smiths and who's been sneaking around the cottage, they're both the same person. It's Spike Doty, right? Anyway, Mrs. Chatham is able to get the legal papers that she needs from Carson, and then she asks Nancy actually if she will go with her to this place. They call it Newkirk, which is a plane trip away. They don't specify where that is, but in the original text, it is New York that they'll go to.
Which makes way more sense for it to be New York, because you would imagine that it would have to be somewhere that John Abner Tomlin frequented, right? In order for him to have a safety deposit box there, which means it would have to be a port town probably, because he was a sea captain. So New York would make sense, but I guess it's possible Newkirk could be on the coast. I don't know.
Yeah, but I have no idea where Newkirk is.
Yeah.
But so Nancy agrees to go to New York with her, and then they're going to have actually Ellen stay and babysit Trixie while they're away. And in the revised text, we specify that they have a very smooth trip getting to Newkirk. And that's absolutely not at all what happens in the original. It is not at all a smooth trip. So Nancy and Mrs. Chatham arrive at the airport in River Heights, or I guess Chicago, wherever the closest airport is in the original. And when she checks in for the flight person at the desk is like, oh, you're Mrs. Chatham. We just got an emergency call for you. Like, somebody at home is freaking out. So they find a phone, and Nancy calls Rocky Edge, and Ellen answers in tears and is like, Trixie is missing. We can't find her. She's been kidnapped. You need to come home right away. We also flash to the bad guy's perspective because our friend Rourke, or somebody, I think it's Rourke. He's actually Bellows in the original. They changed his name.
Okay.
So one of them, we get his perspective. He arrives at the airport just as Nancy and Mrs. Chatham are leaving and asks, has Mrs. Chatham checked in for her flight yet? And because she just did, he confirms, oh, she's on that plane. So he gets on that plane and flies to New York. That plane takes off without them because, again, Nancy and Mrs. Chatham have to go back, and so they miss that flight. And when they get there, Nancy finds Trixie just hiding in the bushes.
Not kidnapped.
Not kidnapped. What happened was Trixie was actually with them the whole time. She jumped in the trunk of the car, and that's why nobody could find her at Rocky Edge. And Ellen starts freaking out. Trixie just wanted to go with them. And so when they get back to Rocky Edge, Trixie just jumps out of the trunk and just runs to the bushes and hides there so that nobody figures out what she's done. But Nancy finds her, and so it's fine, obviously. So they leave Ellen with Trixie, and so they go back to the airport, and they realize that they've missed their flight, obviously, and there's not a second flight, and they're really scared of what they're going to do, because obviously the bad guys know that they're planning to go to New York, right?
But how do they know that they know? How do they know that the bad guys know that they're planning to go to New York?
Because when they go to check in for the flight again to get the second ticket, she's like, oh, your friend already left on that other flight.
Okay.
Or the desk attendant, whoever. And they're like, oh, that's not good. And so Nancy's like, what do we do? Well, at this exact same moment, one of Carson's random clients shows up who's like a millionaire.
Come on my private jet.
Come on my private jet, God. Nancy. And so... And so they do. He just takes them on his private jet and he's like, oh, well, you know, if you're in this trouble, like you can't check into your hotel because they'll find you there. Just stay with me at my penthouse.
Oh
and
my
so they
God.
stay at the penthouse.
Stop.
Yes. But
Must
yeah,
be nice.
Right?
Must be nice to have rich friends.
Right.
My God.
So I guess thanks, Carson. But we never mentioned this client again, this friend of Carson's. He's just there to give us a ride to New York and let us stay at his penthouse.
Well, I understand why they took that out. I have to say. That one doesn't feel relevant.
No, it really is just to slow us down. But it does help us evade the bad guys. So I guess that works. But now we're on kidnapping attempt number 2, I guess, technically.
I've now split my tally from revised text to original text. So
okay.
we're still on 1 for revised text and are now on 2 for original text.
But in the revised text, this whole thing obviously does not happen. It is legitimately very smooth. They get to New York. There is not a weird penthouse thing.
Or Newkirk.
Yes, they stay in Newkirk. They get a hotel room there. Yeah. I don't think that the bad guy joins them at any point.
No. There is like some slight, well, it's like not trouble, but we think it might be like we can't get into the safety deposit box the same day. The bank makes us give the papers and then get an appointment the next morning, which like kind of delays us a little bit. Like we didn't expect to have to do that, but it's not really a problem. They just needed to like verify the legal papers that they had with their attorney, I think.
Yes, and that happens in the original as well. So they do that. They give the documents and they come back the next morning. And then there's like a weird, like some tax guy has to be there to evaluate everything to see if they have to pay taxes on the contents of the box.
Which I'm sure it must have been like, why else would we have put that in here? Because it literally doesn't matter. But like, that doesn't seem correct these days. Like, I feel like what's in the safety deposit box is somewhat private information.
I agree. Maybe it's something to do with the fact that it's like
because
the
he's passed
box,
away.
Yeah, that and the box dues are overdue as well. So they owe money for the rental on the box.
So they're like, do we need to take any of this stuff?
I think so. But I think that they do pay the like past due balance or whatever on it. So it's fine. But eventually, yes, they do get to examine the contents of the box. And inside is a letter that Nancy and Mrs. Chatham read. The cover of the letter actually says like the directions to the treasure or something stupid like that. And so they're like, we found it. But it's not the map either. But basically, this is just a letter explaining a little bit more. It's John Abner explaining a little bit more about his own backstory. And so he does explain the twin thing and his father and all that in the letter. And so it obviously, we double confirm, I guess, we are still sure that this is John Abner. But it does say actually that John Abner, the twin, was not as secretive about his map as Tomlin Smith is. He would tell anybody that would listen, and his entire crew of his ship knew about this map situation. And in fact, I guess he was worried about someone getting their hands on it. So he ended up, like a week before he died, he made a copy. And then
another one.
Yeah.
This is copy number, let's see. Because we made a copy of this Tomlin Smith's map. Then we made another copy of it to give it back to him. Then
and there's a copy we sent to Carson.
That we sent to we made and sent to Carson. It's another copy that this guy made. Sorry, continue. It's just a lot.
No, I'm trying to think because there's going to be more copies as well.
There's going to be more later.
Oh my gosh. So that's what we need to track, really, is all these copies. But so he made this copy like a week before he died. And then he was worried about it. So he says in the letter that he removed the original map from his ship, which was called the Warwick, and he stored it in the Warwick.
What?
And Nancy's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. How do you remove something and then store it in the same place you removed it from? That grammatically, it's not even logical. And so Nancy's like, wait a minute, the ship models that he loved. He must have had like a miniature replica of the Warwick, and he must have put the original into the replica ship.
She got that brain going, Nancy.
So clever. Love it. So we tell Mrs. Chatham this, so we rush back to Rocky Edge to look around. When they arrive, though, we are greeted by a frantic servant. She tells Mrs. Chatham Trixie is missing, probably kidnapped. And we're like, where is Ellen? And actually, Ellen was feeling weird about staying here alone. Yeah. So we actually got Hannah to come for the night as well. Mm-hmm. But the chef of the house wouldn't feed Hannah.
This is wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just like I guess resented her for being there, and so just wouldn't even let her in the kitchen to make a sandwich even. So by about noon the next day, Hannah was fed up and so hungry she went home. And then Ellen had a music lesson and she had to leave at noon that day. So Trixie's just been gone for like 2 hours probably, at least. We don't know.
So crazy. Like, I mean, I understand that like Nancy told Ellen like, oh, we'll be back by the time you have to leave. Like, it shouldn't be a problem. And of course they got delayed and that didn't happen. Mm-hmm. But like thinking about like being like a babysitter or something for a child and just bailing, like because you had something else to do and leaving the child on their own. I know there's other staff there, so maybe it wasn't that big of a deal, but it's just like you were put in charge of this child.
Yeah.
And then Mrs. Chatham still hires her after this.
There is other staff there, and to be fair, she did hire 2 guards.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not saying it as like I'm worried about Trixie's safety. I'm saying it like as a if I were that babysitter.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I would feel terrible if this was me. Yeah. I would feel like it was all my fault. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like, yeah, not being like, oh, I really need to stay, not canceling your music lesson, not going getting some food for Hannah and leaving Hannah here to watch Trixie, which is like, that would have made sense for me. Mm-hmm. Like, I know we're just saying all this stuff because we have to get them out of the picture somehow so that Trixie can be kidnapped, but it's just a crazy situation. Yeah. Anyway.
Oh my gosh. And Miss Chatham is really weird about this news as well. She's like, oh, that kid always runs off. But then they literally find a ransom note next to the phone. And so they're like, oh, okay, well, I guess if she's actually been kidnapped, then we will call the police. And the ransom note asks for money, like $1,000 or something, or you'll never see Trixie again.
So does this also happen in the original text?
It does, but it happens a little differently.
Okay.
We're about to get there, yeah. But so, yeah, Mrs. Chatham calls the police, and Nancy is going to go search a little bit. She runs right to the cabin, and there we find one of Trixie's hair ribbons, and then Nancy's like, okay, well, clearly, if the hair ribbon is just like here in the middle of the floor, there was a struggle. He took her through the secret passageway, right? So she manages to open the panel to the secret passageway, and she like sees a dark figure in there, and we think it's probably Trixie. So she like runs in to try to grab Trixie and then gets hit over the head. Yeah. Knocked out, unconscious.
It turns out this is like Trixie is the one who knocked Nancy out. Mm-hmm. When Nancy comes to, Trixie just kind of like is like tied up and like gagged, but like hovering over Nancy, and Nancy like unties her and everything. And we learn that Trixie accidentally knocked a croquet mallet off of a shelf when Nancy came in, because I guess she was freaking out thinking that her kidnapper was back. Which I guess go Trixie, but it's just funny.
Yeah.
But so Trixie explains that she came into the cottage to play the piano. She wasn't scared anymore of the cottage because of the guards that Mrs. Chatham hired. But then when she did come in, the scary looking man, who we now know is Spike, came up behind her and then like tied her up and hid her in the secret room. But Trixie is fine now. And so Nancy goes to return her to Mrs. Chatham, and that's it.
So for the original text, there is, let me say this, for the revised, when Nancy is away, she like comes back and is like, you haven't paid the ransom yet, Mrs. Chatham, right? And she's like, no, they're supposed to send like a messenger to come pick up the ransom from her, but he hasn't gotten here yet. And so they have like, they kind of stake out to watch and see if anybody's going to arrive to pick up the money, but he never comes. So it's whatever. We don't really think about it again. But in the original, he does come while Nancy is without getting Trixie. So Mrs. Chatham still believes that Trixie is kidnapped and gives the money to this messenger boy. And then the messenger boy, they're able to like, I think he's just on a bicycle or something. So Nancy's able to get in her car and like follow him, and they track him down. The police catch him and arrest him. And then he starts talking. As soon as Nancy's like, hey, you know, they're not going to pay you.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to get any money from having done this for the bad guys, so you might as well talk. And he's like, okay. And so he spills everything. And so that's how we find out a lot of the information that we know is because this guy is able to tell us. Where in the revised, it's like serendipity. We just kind of happen to find this coincidence and we know that it's the truth. Well, it's like, okay, they do actually explain that we find out from this guy and he sends the police to go look for this. And then that's how they find other things. So
I just feel like there's not that much that we need to find out. Like, we pretty much already know who's the one who's trying to get to the treasure. But anyway, but it's also just weird that, like, in the original text, like, we had the kidnapping scare before we left. And then as soon as we get back, there's another one. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so that's count 2 for revised text and count 3 for original text.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, so the next day, Nancy and Mrs. Chatham decide to look at all of the ships in the bottles and try to find the one that's the model of the Warwick. But it's not there. And they realize that particular model was actually sold by Mrs. Chatham a while ago. But Mrs. Chatham still has a record of the sale. And so Nancy goes to track down the buyer, and she takes Bess and George with her. Thankfully, they're able to buy it from this guy with only a little bit of trouble, and they take it like a little ways out of town to like go examine it. And so they're like parked on the side of the road, and they're going to have like a picnic lunch or whatever. But Nancy is like, they're in the car and Nancy's looking at the bottle. She's able to open it and finds the map hidden inside, but they don't realize that as they drove out here, they were followed by the Browns. And so they get up to leave, and they're going to like walk away from their car to go have their picnic lunch, like, I guess in the woods. I'm very confused as to where they are.
Yeah.
Right now.
They're just kind of in the middle of nowhere.
They've decided to do this, but whatever. And so Nancy leaves the bottle in the car and tells Bess to lock the car. And Bess doesn't lock the car. She like fails to lock the car. The lock is like not working or something.
This made me so mad because this did not happen in the original. Nancy just doesn't lock it.
Because why would you?
And it's not Bess's fault at all.
Yeah. But you know, it's crazy to me that like in the revised text as Bess, you know, you have this valuable bottle and Nancy tells you to lock the car. And so they go off and then you're left here trying to lock the car. You can't lock the car. You don't just take the bottle with you. You just be like, you know what? Since I can't lock it, I'm just going to take it with me. And then I'll tell Nancy that I couldn't get the car to lock.
None of this is Bess's fault. I'm so mad. You're innocent, Bess. This isn't on you.
But instead, Bess is just like, well, I guess it'll be fine. And she leaves it in there in the unlocked car. And so obviously when they get back, they see that it's been stolen. But it's like not a big deal, I guess, anyway, because Nancy, once again, pocketed the map. She didn't put it back in the bottle. So they've just lost the model, but they still have the map piece. So it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, why are we even doing this? Why are we playing this game, you guys? It doesn't matter. Why is this information in here? Anyway,
this is even more frustrating than the original because they don't find the ship on the first stop. They have to go to a second house. And it's really frustrating as well because they go through the list and Nancy's like, we got to start with this guy, but he's like the furthest person away. And Bess and George are like, shouldn't we just like call everybody else on the list first before we drive out there? And Nancy's like, no, we must do it my way. And so they go and they're wrong. And so she ends up just having to come back anyway and make the phone calls. And then they find it at the second house. And it's like all of that for nothing. And then it just gets stolen in the picnic scene anyway. So
Nancy kind of is the queen of making things harder for herself. I feel like.
Like, you were so clever earlier, and now we're doing like the least logical way to search down this boat. Anyway,
that's so weird. Anyway, so the ship model is gone, and that it's not an issue because we still have the map. But the bottom of the ship did have like the name of the island that the treasure was hidden on, like carved into it. Nancy remembers that it was Little Palm Island. And so she's like, well, that might be an issue if like whoever finds it notices that and realizes so they know the name of the island. Yeah, that could be an issue, Nancy. Anyway, Also, we know that Captain Tomlin's portion of the map has been stolen. And now that Mr. Smith's portion has been stolen, we know that, like, well, really reaching the treasure now could be anyone's game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay.
Oh, yeah. I don't think I said earlier when John Abner hid the copy because he was worried about it getting stolen. It did end up getting stolen.
Right. Yeah. So the half that went to John Abner Tomlin has been stolen by someone, and the half that was with Tomlin Smith has also been stolen. And so, yeah, both halves have been stolen. We don't know where they are, but they could be in the possession of the same person or bad guys, right? And now that we all know the name of the island, that only makes what happens next even more frustrating. Because so Nancy obviously tells all this to Mrs. Chatham, and Mrs. Chatham tells Nancy to go ahead and try to arrange for a chartered boat and invite pretty much anyone you want, Nancy, by the way. And Nancy ends up inviting Bess and George and Ned and Dave and Bert, Ellen, and Bill Tomlin. Because, of course, we all have to be in couples, right? And so Ned's there for Nancy. Dave's there for Bess, Bert's there for George, and Bill's there for Ellen.
His cousin. His cousin. We have to specify that we're coupled up on this trip. And they even have like a weird scene where Ellen and Bill are like off laughing and giggling together. I'm like, is that supposed to be implied flirting? That is your cousin, sir. And they're aware. They know. It's not like some secret that they don't know that they're cousins. Yeah.
You're so right. I didn't even think about that.
Also, Bert and Dave, of course, are not in the original. They had not been invented yet. But Ned brings some other random frat brother we never hear again. I want to say Tom or something, but Tom is like an expert sailor as well. He loves nautical charts. So he's the one that figures out we're off course later.
Oh my God. So anyway, so unfortunately, Carson is like not able to find the right sized boat to charter. It's like they're either too small or too big. And so they just have to like wait. And they end up like waiting like I think weeks. Like the school year ends and Ellen like does come to work for Mrs. Chatham as Trixie's piano teacher. And like we just move on in time. And I'm like, you guys, we know that both the map pieces are stolen. We literally just had like this narration moment where we're like, well, it's anybody's game. We just have to get there first. And then we're just like, oh, we la-di-da, we can't find a boat the right size. What? Well, get one that's bigger then. Like, I don't understand. Clearly, money's not an issue because Mrs. Chatham's like, yeah, bring whoever you want, Nancy. So it doesn't matter. Or, yeah, kick Bess and George and their dates off and get a smaller boat. I don't understand. I don't understand.
Oh, I have more to rant about this later, but I will save it until we get to that part.
But so Nancy one day goes to visit Ellen at Rocky Edge, and Ellen rushes out saying that Trixie is missing again. So we're worried that she's been kidnapped again, marking this down as number 3 for a revised text.
3 and 4, right?
Well, does this happen in original text too?
It does, yes.
Okay, yes, then 3 and 4 is where we're at.
Oh my gosh.
And I guess this isn't not necessarily the last one either. We'll see. Anyway.
No, there's another worse kidnapping coming.
So, turns out though, Trixie's like fine. She's just up the street, like talking to a ship captain that has randomly walked by Rocky Edge.
Well, Trixie loves ship captains. It wouldn't have been her father. Because Mr. Chatham is Trixie's father.
Know. I guess probably. We don't really know Trixie's last name.
They do not say Trixie's last name, but she does refer to Mr. Chatham as Daddy and saying, I wish Daddy was still alive. He would let me do this because you're mean, Mommy.
Wait,
that kind of
second Mr. Chatham is dead too?
Yeah.
I thought he was still alive.
No. She's a double widow, I guess.
Oh.
Yeah. Is that a thing? Double widow? That's not a phrase, but yeah, she's been widowed twice. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Missed that. Interesting.
I feel like that explains a lot about Trixie's temperament, that if your mom has been through all that and then treats you this way, it explains a lot about sad. Trixie's personality. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so she's just talking to this random guy who's walked by, which first of all, Trixie, don't do that. Don't talk to strangers. Second of all, how is a random ship captain just walking by Rocky Edge? Presumably it's this somewhat big estate. Like, This is the thing that confuses me all the time, is like people are just out roaming and we just run into them. Whatever. So obviously Nancy's like, oh, you're a ship captain, are you? Do you happen to have a boat that we can charter to take? And he's like, why, yes, I do. So that works out and that all gets arranged. And so Nancy goes home. She's like preparing for the trip. And she gets a call from Chief McGinnis, who tells her that he has Spike Doty's address. They like tracked him down to like this boarding house in town. And he gives it to her. And Nancy's like, oh, I'm going to go check it out.
This is an addition for the revised. Okay. I don't know why we spend so much time on this when we could have just gotten to the boat and spent more time on the boat.
Seriously. Well, and I will say that I do think that this was probably my favorite part of the book.
It's funny. It's really funny. It's a good scene.
Because what Nancy does is she dresses up like an elderly housekeeper. She like puts on like a wig, or like she like puts gray powder or something in her hair to make it look gray, and she puts on like an old dress, like junky boots, and she like talks like this. She like talks to herself in the mirror. Hold on, I gotta read it.
It's so funny.
It's so funny. Yeah, quickly she changed clothes and brushed some of the powder into her hair, giving it a gray tinge. She combed it to give it a scraggly appearance. Fully disguised, Nancy posed in front of the full-length mirror in the hall. Well, Mrs. Frisbee, are you ready to do some house cleaning? Nancy asked her reflection. Could she trap the thief in this disguise? A broad grin spread across her face as she answered, give me a broom and I'll sweep Doty into jail. Nancy's such a nerd. What is this?
I love
She's
it.
so entertained with herself. She's just playing dress up and is like, oh, this is going to be so good.
I'm so convinced. Look at me.
Anyway, so she dresses up as a housekeeper. And she goes to visit this boarding house, and she pretends to the landlady that she is like a cleaning lady that Spike has hired to clean his room, and gets the landlady to let her upstairs into his room, and he's not at home. So thankfully, so she's able to do that. And Nancy searches his room but doesn't find anything. But like unbeknownst to her, Mr. and Mrs. Brown have just showed up downstairs and are like asking questions to the landlady. And she happens to mention the housekeeper that she just let upstairs, and they're like, wait, who? And so they're like suspicious that, you know, someone has come and is in Spike's room right now. But luckily, like, Ned has followed Nancy here or something, which is like weird, creepy stalker behavior, Ned. Like, what are you doing?
Said something about noticing her car in the parking lot, right?
But but why? Like,
why were you just driving past, Ned?
Aren't you supposed to be at Emerson right now? Where are you?
Oh no, the school year's over. Remember?
Oh, you're right. So when he's on summer break, he's just following Nancy around like a lovesick puppy.
He should be in Mapleton. Is he just randomly driving around River Heights all day long in hopes of running into Nancy?
I guess so, because he doesn't have anything else to do.
Oh,
he usually has a summer job, but like, I guess not today.
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, he has followed Nancy, and so he's able to like sneak up past the Browns in the boarding house and warn Nancy that they're downstairs. So
he's able to warn her in enough time that they are able to like sneak out before the Browns make it to the room. So we get out before they're able to see that we're there. Nancy goes home and she finds that she has received a note in the mail from someone named Ted. Nancy was certain that the Browns had stolen the model ship from her car, but this Ted in the note claims to be the thief. And he says, oh, I'm sorry, I needed the money, and I'll give you the ship back if you pay me cash for it or whatever. And he also says that she needs this because something strange was written like on the inside of the boat that she might need for her mystery. And she needs to come alone on foot to this address on some street. And so Nancy tells Hannah about this, and Hannah's like, absolutely not. Are you walking through that neighborhood alone? And and Nancy's like, okay, fine, I'll drive. So whatever, Hannah lets her go, and Nancy drives over to this whatever street, and she meets this Ted kid just sitting on the sidewalk, and he comes over to the car and he's like, oh, my grandma has the ship. She's inside sick in bed. You got to come up and like get the ship from her. And Nancy's like, well, no, I'm not getting out of the car. This doesn't feel safe. I'm not coming into any strange building with you. And he's like, well, I guess you don't want the boat then. And so she's like, okay, fine. I'll come upstairs with you.
Nancy.
Gosh. This is the one part I'm like, Nancy, why would you ever? Anyway.
It's an obvious trap. Because if the boat was just stolen by some random, wasn't stolen by the Browns, how would they know that whatever is written on the inside of the boat is somehow important to Nancy?
She even thinks, she's like, how did Ted get my address? It's not important. Let me go anyway. What?
Oh, Nancy.
So she goes upstairs and Ted's like, okay, grandma's just in that room. And it's like really dark in this bedroom. And she goes in and he like closes the door really quick behind her. And she still doesn't get weirded out enough to run. But so she like leans over this old woman and like gives her the cash and like starts to lean over to grab the boat, which is just like on a nightstand next to the bed. And the woman just throws the sheets off and reveals herself to actually be Irene Brown in an old lady getup. And Fred Brown is hiding in the closet, so he just jumps out and they're able to tie Nancy up. And then, strangely, it's like a townhome situation, and the adjoining townhome like connects to this townhome through like a secret panel in the closet. So they open up the panel and shove Nancy through into the neighboring home, which is just like this abandoned house, and leave her tied up there. And they force Nancy to write a note to Hannah, instructing Hannah to hand over a copy of the map to the deliverer of the note.
Here's the thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like, why are we doing all of this when we could be doing all of this on a boat or on a deserted island?
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I understand they're trying to heighten the danger and give us like another instance of kidnapping, and all of that. But like, we've spent so much time with secret panels, rooms, and people trapped and kidnapped inside secret like, we have the opportunity to change the setting here and make it so much more interesting and exciting. And instead, we're just doing the same thing again with someone else.
Do they not already have a copy of both maps? Because all these people are working together. Even if Spike had been the one to steal the other copy, they could have just worked together and gotten a whole map.
I think at this point they're not working together anymore, but it's never really clear as to when it happens. But I think at some point Spike like double crosses the Browns, or the Browns
or they think
like
that
don't
he has.
don't trust him anymore or something, and so they're trying to like get the map from him. And I think that's why they showed up at the boarding house before, because they wanted to get into his room to like look for the map. And I think that's why they showed up at Mrs. Chatham's house to like warn her about him, because they didn't want him getting that copy of the I don't know.
That makes more sense. Yeah.
I don't know. But
so Nancy, she's forced to write this note, right? So she comes up, she's like, okay, if I use the word copy of the map, and then if I think really, really hard and try to transmit some psychological waves to Hannah, she will understand not to hand over the real map, right? And this is kind of cool because at this point, the story actually flips to Ned and Carson's point of view. They're at the Drew home and they realize that Nancy has been gone for like a little bit too long. They're starting to get worried. And so they ask Hannah. Hannah gives them the address where Nancy went. And so they go to the house to look for her. And of course, she's not at that address because she's in the neighboring house that's been abandoned, right? So they actually find the smashed boat, because when she tried to grab it, it got smashed on the floor. And so they find it on the floor of this bedroom or whatever. And then this is actually really funny. They find a button from Nancy's dress on the floor, and they both look at it and they're like, we don't know what Nancy's clothing looks like. We couldn't describe a single dress that she owns. Both of them look at each other and they're like, we have no idea what Nancy was wearing today. So Ned has to go call Hannah. Yeah. And Hannah's like, yes, that's exactly the button Nancy was wearing today, and confirms that this is indeed Nancy's button. And obviously there was a struggle here. But yeah, they are able to find Nancy in the secret passageway. They rescue her, and then they race back home to hopefully stop Hannah from handing over the real copy of the map. And so we learn from Hannah that, this woman Mrs. Brown came to the house, asked for the copy of the map. Hannah invited her inside. Well, actually, Fred Brown was outside cutting the phone wire so that Hannah couldn't call the police for help.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
That gets fixed really quickly. It's not like a big deal or anything. But Hannah does say, oh, your word copy tipped me off. I made a copy and I changed some of the details. Hannah made a decoy, and that's the one that she gave. Thank you, Hannah.
Hell yeah, Hannah.
Always our superstar. So at this point, McGinnis calls us again and is like, well, the Browns have been arrested. So Nancy goes to the station to identify them. Obviously, it's them, so she interviews them a little bit. Mr. Brown doesn't say anything, but Mrs. Brown starts spilling the beans a little bit. Nancy asks her if she's been working with Rourke, who is, if you remember from the beginning of the story, he's the one who tried to buy the map from Tomlin Smith. She seems to recognize that name, but denies knowing anything about him. And then she asks what they did with the copy of the map that Hannah gave them, and she's like, oh, we sold it already. You're never going to find it. Okay, great. So we're glad that the Browns are apprehended, but it's still concerning that Rourke and Spike Doty are out and about. So they plan to leave on their trip to try to beat them to the treasure as soon as possible because he has not been in his room, according to his landlady. So it's possible that maybe they already left for this trip. So now we need to hurry it up if we're going to make it to Little Palm Island before the bad guys do. So the next day, I guess we get like a plane to New York to get on the boat with Captain Stryver, who's the boat captain that Trixie had met randomly on the side of the road. And then he is going to charter them from New York down to Little Palm Island. And this is, okay. Little Palm Island is a real place.
Is it?
It's in the Florida Keys.
I didn't know that.
Actually, my parents got married there, so that's the only reason that I'm familiar with it. Yeah, and so it's really nice. And so I was reading this, I'm like really confused. I'm like, why would you not just get a plane or a train to Miami and then charter a boat from Miami to the Florida Keys? Like, surely once you get to Miami, it's going to be way easier to charter a boat or a yacht. And faster than it is to try to find one in landlocked River Heights. Like, of course you had trouble finding a boat, Carson. You need to be on a coastal place to find this.
Oh my gosh.
And then I was like, well, you know, Little Palm Island, technically it is like a privately owned island. Maybe it's just a complete coincidence that there's a real place named this. Maybe it wasn't called that back then. So I did look up the history a little bit. It was privately owned back at the time that the original would have been written. And so it would not have been called Little Palm Island at the time. And so I'm like, okay, maybe I'm completely off. Maybe it's not anywhere near Florida. But then later in the revised, we do specify that the island is in the South Atlantic. So still, why did we not go to Miami? Like,
yeah.
And then I was like, okay, well, maybe, plausibly, there's just not a good train or plane route from River Heights to Miami at the time. But I looked that up as well. And there were plenty of train and plane routes that could have gotten us from the Chicago area to Miami much faster.
Well, but so in the original text versions, we weren't in the Chicago area, right? We think that River Heights in the original text version, or no, we think, no, that would be the Midwest. But in the revised text, we think it would be the eastern, not quite the coast, but like northeast.
Possibly.
Right. Because we're thinking, because Mildred probably based off of where she was from.
Right.
And when Harriet was more responsible for the text, we think that it was maybe based off more where she was from, right?
I'd have to go back and look at the time that Harriet moved everything to closer to New York, New Jersey. I think we're still kind of more
Midwest.
We're still more west than that area where River Heights might eventually end up. And so still, I'm like, why would we spend more time on the water? Just for safety purposes. It's safer to be on land for a longer stretch of time and then get on your boat once you get to Miami. You would be way faster. I don't know. That really annoyed me. I'm like, why are we so dead set on going to New York and finding a yacht there to travel on?
I mean, I'm sure maybe plane travel wasn't as common, but yeah, you would think a train.
Miami was a major train port.
Yeah.
Even in like the 20s, it was a major plane port as well. Key West was massive in like the late 1890s to the 1920s, 30s, 40s.
Or, and because we'll remember this from A Haunted Showboat. that Nancy drove from River Heights to Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
So presumably she could have also just driven. They could have driven from River Heights to Florida.
Right.
Not that different of a trip. Maybe an extra day.
Logistically, this
Also,
bothers me.
I just looked up pictures of Little Palm Island and it is gorgeous.
Yeah.
So,
I've never actually been, but I've seen pictures, of course, and it's very pretty.
Yeah. We should go to Little Palm Island, Kori.
We should. Yes.
Definitely should. There's like a resort there now. So
I think that is the name of the resort. Like Little Palm Island owns the island,
right.
if that makes
sense.
Yeah.
It's not very big. So
No, it's not at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm assuming that this is in the Florida Keys, and maybe that the name is just a complete coincidence and they happen to pick the name that island would eventually become anyway, which is a weird...
That is crazy.
Weird real-life coincidence.
Maybe, Kori, headcanon theory, crazy talk, maybe the reason why they named that island Little Palm Island is because someone read this Nancy Drew book.
Gosh.
And they were like, there was that island in that one Nancy Drew book that I really liked. I bet the vibes that we should name it that. We should name it that.
That's probably why my mom subconsciously chose to get married there, was because she's such a big Nancy Drew fan. She probably remembered reading Little Palm Island as a kid and was like, perfect. Oh my gosh, that's funny.
This is the thing, though, is like when you have like these books that like have like existed for so long throughout history, it's like a chicken and egg situation.
Mm-hmm.
How like you can't know what came first,
right? No, that's my new headcanon. Real life, whoever the owner of Little Palm Island Resort is, they were just a big Nancy Drew fan, and they were like, you know what? Little Palm Island it is. Okay, yes, so that is my rant on our travel logistics. I don't know why we went to New York instead of just going to Miami straight away, but we arrive in New York, and Captain Stryver is waiting there with his crew. There's like a weird thing where Captain Stryver's like, I need like an extra day to vet the crew members that I'm trying to hire because I've had to get this crew together really quickly. I don't know them that well. And Miss Chatham's like, no, we got to go now. There's no time. Like, we have to beat the bad guys to the island. So we leave with our new crew that we have. And also, right before they're about to leave, Nancy finds a note on a dock that implies that Spike Doty has recently left from this same dock. Also, bro, go to Miami. What are we doing? So Nancy assumes that this means that Spike may have had the opportunity to like sabotage their boat. So they take a little bit of time to like look for a bomb. They don't find one. So we're on our way.
Doesn't matter at all.
That does not happen in the revised, and neither does this next thing.
Original, you mean?
Sorry. Yeah, that doesn't happen in the original, and neither does Bess going overboard.
Okay.
Because that is what happens next. And this makes me so mad that we have to do this to Bess. But yeah, that night, because it's a several day trip down to Little Palm Island. So that night, they're just kind of chilling on the yacht, having a little dance party, and they hear a shout, and Bess has gone overboard. Dave is able to jump in and rescue her. I feel like you would die. I feel like this would kill you. Absolutely. In real life if you did this. But basically, we investigate a little bit, and Bess is fine, but we do see that the like railing that she'd been leaning on the side of the ship had not been secured, and so it looks like maybe someone did sabotage that so that she would fall. This makes Nancy fear that maybe there's more sabotage waiting for us on this ship, but we don't know just yet. The next day, we meet a member of the crew who was not fully vetted in time. His name is Snorky. Spike and Snorky. Great bad guy names.
I thought for sure this guy was Spike in disguise and that this Snorky was like just a made up name. I mean, I'm sure it is a made up name. But like, I was like, this is the kind of name that someone comes up with when like they're trying to lie about who they are, but they haven't thought ahead of time about like their backstory or any of the details surrounding it. And so when you ask them their name, they're like, it's not Snorky. My name's Snorky. My name's Snorky. Because they saw like a snorkeling like mask in the corner, and they're like looking frantically for something. Do you know that? Sorry, you know that scene in the Brady Bunch where like Marcia or something is like asking about Jan's boyfriend, And Jan doesn't actually have a boyfriend, but she's made up this boyfriend because I think Marsha has a boyfriend or something. Okay. And Jan is like, they're like, well, what's his name? And she like is like looking around the breakfast table for something to call him. And I forget what it is, the name that she actually gives him. But she's like, she makes up a name, Tropicana. That's what she. His name is Tropicana. George Tropicana. And I think their mom's like, oh, is he Cuban or something?
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh.
That's what this moment reminded me of. Snorky. Yes. My name is Snorky.
Sure it is. Oh my gosh. Well, Nancy decides that she does not like the look of Snorky. And it actually turns out that he's steering the ship and he's not supposed to be doing that because obviously Captain Stryver's in charge of the ship, right? And he says, oh, no, they're both sick right now. So that's why I'm steering. And so we go to visit the captain and it turns out that like he and the first mate really have like really bad food poisoning or something like that. So Bill, who is really good at sea navigation, this is actually Ned's friend Tom or whoever in the original text, but Bill in this version really likes sea navigation, so he takes over the steering of the ship.
They end up having to like physically remove Snorky from the ship wheel.
Yeah,
he like won't leave, and so Ned and Bill have to like carry him away.
And Snorky gets like really like bitter about this. Even he's like really mad at them for the rest of the trip. It's really awkward. But what's strange is that after Bill starts steering, he gets sick the next day as well. So Nancy goes and like looks through Snorky's belongings and they find some like white powder in his stuff. And Nancy's like, okay, well, clearly he's been sabotaging the food to make everyone ill so that we like, I guess, don't get to the island or whatever. So they swap it with salt and like do a test. And then the next day, Ned's meal is like extra salty, right? Yes. So they determine like, yeah, he would have tried to poison Ned next. So whatever, they throw out the soup and then they lock him in the brig so that he can't do any more damage on the way there. The rest of the trip to the island is uneventful. And then when they arrive, they like drop anchor just like a few 100 feet away from the shore or whatever. And they're about to take like a little,
dinghy?
What is it called? A dinghy. Thank you. Take a dinghy out to the shore and they realize Snorky is missing. And we assume that he has jumped off the ship and has swum ashore to meet up with Spike and whoever else. Rourke. Yeah.
Right. So only the guys like go to the island. It's like Bill, Ned, the captain or whatever. Everybody else has to like stay on board. I'm sorry. This is another one of those things where I'm like, how in the world is Nancy Drew letting Ned Nickerson be the first person to step foot on the island where there's buried treasure? Not on her life.
Never.
Not on her life. But she does, whatever. And when they go ashore, they find 3 men, Spike Doty, Snorky, and then another man who claims to be the island's owner. And he says he, like, I guess just discovered Spike and Snorky there, and he didn't know that they had been digging, and he doesn't want any more digging on the island. And he lets the captain and everyone, like, take Spike and Snorky, like, prisoner, like, back to the ship to be locked up in the brig. But so they do that and they get back to the ship, and Nancy is being like relayed this story from them, and she hasn't seen this owner guy yet, and so she thinks that like this guy wasn't really the owner, that she thinks like maybe he's another bad guy and that the real owner of the island has been locked away somewhere. This is another crazy thing to me because I'm like, well, why does there have to be an owner to this island here? Like, did you look up that someone owned this island before you got here? No, I know for a fact you didn't. We didn't talk about that because you could have been like, ring, ring, Mr. Island owner, excuse me. Can we come treasure hunt on your island? And or did you ever find any treasure on your island?
Right.
Whatever. But so after dark, they go back to the island to like go search, and they find this cabin where there is a family tied up. And yes, we learn that these are the real owners to the island, and that this other guy who was claiming to be the owner, has like literally like chained them up, and he's like off sleeping like in like a porch that's like connected to this cabin. And
is this another kidnapping? Is that number 5 and 6?
this is kidnapping 5 and 6.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, wow. Anyway, so they're able to like get to this guy. Turns out it's Rourke, and they overpower him and take the key and unlock all the real owners of the island or whatever. And the family is, of course, so happy because they've been rescued, and they let Nancy and everyone go ahead and dig up the island. And the owner guy says that he's like just a naturalist and like is only there because he wants to be able to like continue his work in peace and like raise his family on like this like remote island or whatever. But he's like, yeah, go ahead and dig everything up. That's not going to disturb the natural wildlife or anything. I'm sorry. Okay, whatever. I will say too that like actually when they first come up upon that family, what they do is they find the wife tied up in a bed separately from the rest of her family, which are tied up downstairs. And the implications of that are thoroughly sickening.
Yes.
I hate to have to mention that, but I feel like I just needed to.
And she's like crying too when Nancy gets to her. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. She's terrified.
It's horrifying.
Anyway, so early the next morning, Nancy, they go back to the ship because it's dark, right? So they're going to start the next morning. And early the next morning, Nancy ends up getting woken up by a member of the crew who has a message for her. And he like tells her to like come up onto the deck. So she comes up onto the deck, and it turns out like this message is just Nancy is now going to be punished, quote unquote, for not minding her own business. And so this guy knocks her down. He ties her up in like this canvas sheet and tosses her overboard.
This is also an addition for the revised. This did not happen in the original. And who is this? Because like our bad guys are tied up in the brig. So what?
Well, so it turns out that this guy actually was hired by Rourke back in New York, and it literally this doesn't matter because Ned happens to overhear all of this happening. He heard Nancy get up and like I guess heard a splash or whatever, and so he runs upstairs and like knocks this guy out and rescues Nancy. So she's fine. It's fine. But anyway, now it's the next day. They all have their maps and they go ashore and they start their search for the treasure uninterrupted. It does take a little bit of trial and error. We like realize we weren't reading the maps correctly or something, but eventually we do dig and we find a chest.
This is a little bit different as well from the original to the revised. It annoyed me in the revised because Nancy says something about how one of the decoy maps was actually backwards. And so you have to know to look in the opposite place of it. And so they go and they still look in the wrong place. And she's like, oh yeah, we were looking at the wrong map. Again, like I forgot 5 minutes ago that I said it's backwards and we need to look at flip, like a mirror image, basically. That's not what happens in the original. Everyone wakes up before Nancy, and Trixie is so excited to start digging that she makes everyone go start digging while Nancy's still asleep. And of course they're digging in the wrong place. And then when Nancy wakes up, she goes out and she's like, you guys know it's a mirror image, right? We're supposed to be over there. And then they find it. Yeah. So sorry, that's a very small difference, but it's like you just said it, Nancy, and then you go to the wrong place anyway. I don't.
But yeah, so they find this chest, and the Smiths, turns out, are also there. We like didn't mention this before, but Ellen's parents are there. Mr. and Mrs. Smith are there.
They were on the boat the whole time. They make a better deal of like making it clear in the original that they've been there the whole time. But also Mr. Smith, who is wheelchair bound, is one of the people that helps them dig. I'm like, okay.
Well, and they say that he's had suddenly the first time we learn that they're there, we're like, oh, he's actually had a miraculous recovery. Yeah. And he's fine now.
Great.
So yeah, so they're there, and they open the chest, and inside is the treasure. There's even like a message from the original Captain Tomlin to his descendants. So there's really no question that this is the treasure that they were looking for and that it's legit. And of course, the Smiths, Mrs. Chatham, and Bill Tomlin all agree to split the treasure. And they also give the owners of the island an amount, which is like, I should think so. Like, first of all, they own this island. So I think they probably own the treasure. But second of all, they were just like chained up in their house. Like, I should hope they get some compensation for this horror that they've just been through. But, and then also they like give money to like, or like some of the treasure to like everybody who's there. So like Bess, George, freaking Dave and Bert get
even
some
the crew
treasure.
members of the boat.
And they give Nancy a special jeweled bracelet, right? Oh my God, whatever. But then the police come by plane and they take custody of the criminals. And Nancy, like, I guess, explains the case to them a little bit, although there's really not that much to explain.
Yeah,
really
we solved it already.
It's just that, like, Rourke, Dodie, Snorky, and the Browns were all in league together to get this treasure, which they had learned about from the son of the first mate of the original ship. And he's the one who'd stolen half of the map from John Abner Tomlin, but he like lost it. So so that's why they carried out all of like these thefts and these sabotages, because they'd heard about it and they were trying to find the maps to get to the treasure first. And that's really it. And and had it not been for Hannah changing the map that she gave to Mrs. Brown, they would have found it first. So Hannah really is the one who got this treasure. So let me ask you something. Where the heck is Hannah's portion of this treasure?
Where the heck is Hannah on this trip? Why was she not invited to go on the boat?
Well, I mean, if I were Hannah, I would be like, no, thank you. You know what
I
mean?
Fair.
I don't need to come. But if they give a piece of this treasure to literally every single person who was there, where is Hannah's portion of the treasure?
She deserves some of it, for sure.
She's the only reason why you found it. Anyway, so that's the end. And that evening they have like they're back on the ship, and in the moonlight Nancy's talking to Ned, and Ned asks Nancy to stop focusing on mysteries and to focus on him for a change. And Nancy says, aye, Captain. But I think it's maybe supposed to be kind of mocking. So maybe it's okay. I don't know.
That conversation does not happen in the original. They just get back on the boat and Nancy sings a song for everyone. And that's the ending.
Nancy, not Ellen?
Nancy sings the song for everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Weird. Well, I mean, I don't know. I might prefer that to this ending. Because the ending, it was just felt kind of gross.
Yeah, it's weird.
Because like the aye Captain, or aye sir is what she says to him, and she gives a mock salute though, which I was like, that's funny. I appreciate that. But yeah, Nancy, how about you how about taking your mind off mysteries for a while and thinking of me instead? He says this after we just got, I don't know, $1 million, like whatever this treasure is probably worth. What are you talking about, Ned? Literally, what are you talking about? How can you say that after he just got some of this money? You should be saying, thank you, Nancy. Thank you so much for bringing me along on this amazing treasure hunt, this one-of-a-kind experience I would never have, that I profited off of. But no, he's all grumpy and salty because Nancy, like, did this instead of, quote-unquote, paying attention to him. Where have you been, Ned? Where have you... Sorry, it just makes me so mad.
He didn't get enough slots on her dance card. That's why he's salty.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that's it. I don't know. So our kidnapping count for revised text is 5, and for original text is 6.
So many.
And then count for a number of duplicate versions of the map. Innumerable.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Who knows?
So many. More than 6, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
At least, yeah.
At least 6.
Because there's obviously the originals of each, and then Nancy makes 2 copies of Tomlin Smith's, and then there was already at least 3 copies of Tomlin Smith's, right?
Well, 3. Nancy makes 2, Hannah makes 1.
Yes.
So that's 5.
Whereas, it's Tomlin Smith's the one she makes a copy of.
And then we have the copy that John Abner
made a copy.
Made.
And then there were 2 more copies of that one that Nancy made, right?
Ooh,
or 1 more copy?
I don't know. I'm lost now. I don't know. But a lot. There's a lot of copies of the map.
Maybe 7 plus that many.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. So it was crazy. It's crazy. Like, in retrospect, I do think all the shenanigans are pretty fun.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty fun time.
It's very exciting.
Yeah. Even though it's a little bit incomprehensible. And a lot of the times I'm like, why are you telling me this? Why is this important? It's not. Like the machine that's like explosive. Here we are at the end. No explosions. We didn't even get a bomb on the ship. Why do we have a bomb scare? Why? Okay. Oh, sorry. I'm getting upset. But in retrospect, I think the shenanigans were all fun. Just not necessary, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I think you could have written a better story if you had taken 50% out, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm sure in the original text, that sounds like kind of what happened. Plus, you had a little bit longer to develop the things that are going on. So, yeah.
Okay, I enjoyed the ending. I like that we end on Treasure Island and we find our big reveal and everything. But I still felt like maybe something was missing. Not necessarily from the ending, but I just felt like there was more for the story itself.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like all the stuff with like, oh, Miss Chatham's so weird and she's so mean to Trixie. I was almost expecting like, not even like a plot twist necessarily, but maybe
double
just
cross.
like, no, just more like a more backstory about her. Like we get like some sort of, not even a plot twist, but maybe like a big reveal of like, oh, she actually has this like, and maybe just the answer is trauma. She's been through a lot. And so maybe she's not the most pleasant person because of that. But I thought that maybe there would be some other thing that Nancy uncovers. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, now that you recognize this in yourself, maybe you'll be a little bit nicer to your kid. And so we'll have like a happy ending. Because I don't feel like we really even got a lot of resolution to the twin story for either sides of the family.
Yeah. That I agree. I think what's missing here is an emotional beat.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because we get the money and the treasure, and that's great, but like it doesn't really change anything about Trixie's life. They've got plenty of money. It's not going to change her situation. The money's going to change the Smiths family's situation, but we didn't even really get the reaction to finding out the brother was dead. He gets the photo and he's like, oh, it's a shame he's dead, but thanks for finding it out anyway. Anyway, go on with the rest of the mystery, and it's like one sentence.
Yeah.
We didn't get any sort of like reaction really, or like oh, I'm so glad that I got this treasure in the end because I feel like I've finally lived out my father and my brother's last wishes kind of thing. Honestly, I thought we were going to find out he was alive. That the bad guys have been like holding him hostage or something. It doesn't really make sense because I think it's a long time. Like he's been dead for like almost 20 years in the revised.
Well, it would have been cool if he had been stranded on the island.
That would have been really cool. Yeah. Or maybe he was on the island this whole time. Yeah. One of the two. And then we find out, oh, he's actually alive. And then we get the reunion. And then I realize, oh, Trixie's not even his child. So it's not like, it wouldn't be sweet in that sense because Mr. Chatham is her father. But still, it would have been great for the brother to be reunited with his twin.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I agree. I think we were missing some of that emotional depth. And I think that's part of the reason why I felt like the character of Mrs. Chatham gave me such like whiplash because it was kind of like at the beginning, she's portrayed as being pretty awful, like borderline abusive, like definitely emotionally abusive to Trixie at least, or neglectful in some way. Because Trixie is portrayed as being kind of like wild, like this wild child. And Nancy like says that really it's just because she's like seeking attention, right? And because she's lonely and all of that stuff. And she just needs someone to like be there for her and like guide her, right? Which is probably true. And so we set Mrs. Chatham up as being like this horrible mother and kind of a bad employer. She's being really pressuring to Ellen about taking this job. But then it's like, oh, yeah, let's all get aboard the boat. And like, I'm happy to pay for this and bring whoever you want. And let's split the tree. Like she just turns into like a fine, like great person, like all around, like just like wealthy, generous lady. And it's like, these two things don't make sense. And then it's like this whole book was like kind of set up as to be like, well, is Ellen going to take this job or not? But then in like chapter 10, chapter 12 or 13 or something, we just like learn, it's later than that, like 15 or something. We like learn like, oh no, Ellen just took the job.
She's been here for weeks now.
Okay, so it didn't matter
Right.
that Mrs. Chatham was mean, or like, is she not mean anymore? Like, what?
Yeah.
Some of like the emotional, relational pieces were definitely missing. And yeah, like the Ellen's like heartfelt, or her dad's heartfelt story of like missing his brother. We don't get really any resolution to that.
Nope.
I do think too that like we should not have been doing all of our investigation in River Heights.
No.
To just have this wrap up on the island. We needed a lot more search for and search on the island, or like searching in a tropical location.
I agree. Yeah.
We needed to be on a boat for longer. Like, we needed way more of that. We needed to get there and start searching in chapter 10, and then have like the sabotage and things happening along the way. While we're there, because that raises the stakes, right? Because we're not at home. Like, we don't have our police chief who we can go to. We don't have like our food in the fridge, like things get more dire when you have limited resources available to you. And so like, because I thought we were getting kind of close to that whenever Snorky sabotages the food, because they start thinking like, well, he could have sabotaged all the food. What if we don't have anything to eat? We're like out here in the middle of the Atlantic. How are we going to get more food? How are we going to know what's safe to eat?
Right.
And so that's when they decide, okay, well, we're going to give him the food to eat, and we'll know based on what he won't eat, what is poisoned, right? Which works. But yeah, so because you can even see in that kind of situation how much scarier that is. And so if we had spent more time doing things like that, instead of someone getting kidnapped for the 5th time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like a bomb threat when you're on the water.
Yeah.
Like we didn't find the bomb in the port, but then we find it when we're like hours offshore, and
that would have been more exciting. Definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
Because then what are we going to do? Are we going to can we defuse the bomb? Are we going to just chuck it overboard, boat away, and hope we get far enough away? Screw the fish?
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
So that would have been way more interesting. I think there are lots of things they could have done to make it better, but overall, I enjoyed it. You know? Yeah.
It was a fun one.
Anyway, anything else?
I made some notes. Let me double check my book here. I think I've said everything.
Yeah, I think most of my comments I made while we were mid summary.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think just why not Miami? Why New York?
Yes.
No, kidding.
Well, no, but here's the thing is like, if we're going to make a book that's kind of about like treasure and like tropical island and like searching, why are we not searching in tropical locations? Why are we looking at maps when we could be looking at maps in Miami? If there really is such a time crunch, why are we waiting? Why are we pussyfooting around here when we should be getting there, making moves? You know what I mean?
Yep. Not waiting weeks to find a boat.
You can't find a boat. Okay, well, let's get as close as we can. Let's go down there. Like,
surely you would have better luck finding someone in person who could charter your boat for you. Yeah.
It's just crazy to me. It's just crazy to me that as soon as we realize that everybody has a copy, that copies of the map are just out there and that the bad guys could have it, why are we still in River Heights?
Right. The setting's too exciting too. A tropical island? Yeah, get me there now. Not in chapter 20 or 19, whatever it is.
I need a scene where Ned climbs a coconut tree to get a coconut for Nancy.
Oh.
That's what I need.
Yes.
And I was denied it by the quest of the missing map.
To be fair, we go back in Crocodile Island. We come back to the Keys. So
yes, I know, but the Crocodile Island is horrible.
Yeah, it's not. This was a way better story, I'd say.
Yeah. But oh well. Okay. Flashlight score?
Oh no.
My god.
Okay.
3. I think I'm going to give it just a 3.
Yeah.
I don't think it deserves anything more. And I don't want to give it less because I didn't dislike it.
Fair.
Yeah. But it wasn't good by any means.
I'd agree. Revised gets a 3 for sure. I think the original 4.25.
Wow.
Not quite. I loved it, but there was still a lot of things that it's like, oh,
yeah.
When is the plot twist coming? When are we getting more explanation? When is the emotional moment gonna like really sink in?
Yeah.
And it never comes. So,
oh well.
Yeah.
But overall, I think a good one.
Of course.
But
very exciting, like we said.
Very exciting. But we are on to the next. And interestingly enough, we are actually going to be covering a mystery story that happened right before this one. Our patrons voted on number 18, Mystery of the Moss-Covered Mansion. So we're going literally backwards a step to cover another mystery story, the one that happens right before this. So yeah, I'm excited.
Well, with a title like that, let's hope that the setting is a little bit better for this one.
I do feel like the ones that center on a spooky place are always better.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Like I think about Crumbling Wall, obviously Hidden Staircase, right? You know, we've got some classic ones that involve spooky houses. So I am pretty excited. Plus, this one has a jaguar on the cover of it. I'm like, what is that about? So yeah, I'm very excited to find out. So we will do that next time, regular Drews.
Yep, we'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to Regular Nancy Drew. If you like this episode, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe.
Email us at regularnancydrew@gmail.com.
You can also visit our website, regularnancydrew.com, and also follow us on Instagram at regularnancydrew.
You can also support us on Patreon. Patrons at the $3 level vote on upcoming episode topics and get exclusive access to our Scoop Sesh series.
And all patrons receive early access to each episode as well as weekly bonus content.
And to all you regular Drews out there, thanks for listening.